can call 603-283-6160 and bring up whatever is on your mind. With you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
And Jay Noon.
And we have lots of things to talk about. There's some huge things in the news. Lots of, one thing that Trump said seems to be one of the most terrifying things he's ever said. And he said it just super relaxed and like it was no big deal. He said, talking about, maybe it was in reference to China or Russia. Somebody was asking a question about China or Russia and how our relationship is with them. I could be wrong about what they had asked, but he responded saying, the United States has weapons that the whole world doesn't even know that we have. We have the most insane weapons that are more powerful than anything people could imagine, something like that. Okay, and I could also have the
Russians
wrong.
Claim the same thing.
Yeah, they probably all do claim that, but
he's just F-talking like a little punk, or like a very powerful punk, not even a little punk, you know.
There are some weapons I had never heard of before, but I was listening to Alex Jones's Thursday episode, and he was saying that there's like confirmed declassified since like the 90s or early 2000s. They've talked about the fact that the United States has had these weapons that do things like, create something called a strangeling, which is an atom or something, a particle that they don't even know how to classify it, and they call it a strangeling, and that it's so heavy that it would just sink all the way down to the Earth's core and then expand and kill, eat the whole world, basically. Slowly. I said eat because it reminds me of Omicron, the planet eater, but it would go down into the core and then slowly. And that's not science fiction.
Cause some kind of reaction that would make the Earth basically disintegrate.
Yeah.
Or combust.
And that's
spontaneously.
That's something that people already know about. So Trump is trying to claim at least he has something worse. Which how could it get worse than that?
No, I mean the COVID-19 virus. If you look, people talk about now. I don't know if this is true, but you see these videos online where they take a certain 5G frequency. Whatever, something hertz. It was if you could tune 5G at 650 hertz is what it said, I believe. And I'm like, okay, I don't really, know how to use that information. What is 5G exactly? But they show that this, the graphene, which is allegedly in the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, and many other vaccines.
Because it's also in tattoos, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that freaks me out.
Yeah, I don't have any tattoos.
I wish I didn't.
And so good. Another reason not to get tattoos. I know there's I agree. There's lead and other heavy metals in tattoos that can be an issue.
I would tell anybody who asked me to never get a tattoo, and I have 3. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I don't think I've ever seen a tattoo on you before.
This one.
Oh, okay.
And the other 2 are just on my back.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of people are covered in tattoos.
Yeah, it could be worse, but I still just don't want any of them. I just don't even like them. But so you were saying that they can.
In these videos, the graphene molecules under a microscope in a petri dish with some kind of liquid, when its frequency hits them, they start just making into assembling themselves and doing some kind of thing. So if that is in this vaccine that millions of people got, and we have this complete almost 5G web and all these cities, all these big cities I've traveled into are all 5G'd up, 5G towers, like every other telephone pole. A couple months ago, I traveled, from Mexico to New Hampshire. We went Mexico, California. Then we flew to San Diego, and we literally drove from San Diego all the way back to New Hampshire. We stopped, visited with some people on the way.
Nice.
It took us a couple weeks to do that. But anyways, Phoenix, pretty much every city.
There's one in Keene.
Had one 5G tower?
I looked it up to make sure I'm talking about the same thing. And yeah, there's one of those on just 3 streets away.
Yeah, so there were several of those 5G towers in Tucson, Arizona, and in Phoenix. Some of these are really strange. Sorry, but for the listeners, they're a big cylinder with it's thicker at the top. It's like a 13-foot tall steel pole with what appears to be 2 55-gallon drums mounted on top of it. And that one is 3 devices, it looks like, stacked. And that's a different picture of one.
Oh, yeah.
And anyways, they have them all over the place. But also when I was in Mexico, in Acapulco. We were hanging out where Anarchapulco is, Bonfil Beach, which is just south of Acapulco, which is basically right next to the airport. It is like a tourist location for basically Mexicans, people from Mexico City, other parts of Mexico. And it's pretty poor. A lot of people walk around flip-flops, cooking on charcoal grills and serving you all kinds of food. Pretty interesting place. But they had cell phone towers all set up in these trailers. And then I was sitting there one day at the cafe, and we watched like 10 of these rigs go by, and by rig it was a truck and trailer, so it was like these Isuzu, Mitsubishi Fuso type, like, you know, Japanese, Korean flat nose trucks, and they were pulling these gooseneck trailers. They had 3 7K axles on them, so they were like 21,000 pound GVW gooseneck trailers, kind of like what we use hauling hay around here and cows and stuff. And they had these satellite or cell phone 5G equipped towers, and it said 5G right on them. Like, you know, they're bragging about it. Saw a whole parade of them go by.
They were just like going off to go install them elsewhere?
Somewhere. They're just driving. But, you know, it's like a main drag that kind of go. If you look at West Coast of Mexico, the only like real truck passable road is right there on the coast. And it's Revolution Boulevard is what they call it in Acapulco. And so that's right, you know, right there watching, you know, these trucks go by. So they had them set up on trailers everywhere. But yeah, 5G is definitely a thing. So if you have this 5G web and you can tune the 5G to a certain frequency to start basically activating this graphene, whatever you call it, graphene, I guess it is, that's allegedly in all the people who took the vaccine. Does it cripple the people? Does it drive them crazy? Does it kill them? You know, what does it do? Is this even true? Well, so that sounds like the weapon he could be talking about, because if you could just, you know, wipe out a population because you drugged them all, and, you know.
And there's definitely been somebody, but the United States won't admit to it necessarily, that's been practicing with microwave weapons on people, and then they get Havana syndrome.
So, yeah, and the microwave thing is like that. So I understood about microwave weapons when I was in high school. Like, you could do with the microwave in your house. There was a case that I had read about, and it was, I believe I was in high school, but it was a conflict with neighbors, and this guy basically did a thing to make his microwave activate with the door open, and he put it right against the wall, and he nuked his neighbors.
Oh my, that's horrible.
Yep. And he would basically turn it on when he left the house, and he would turn it off as soon as he come back in the house.
And he killed them?
Allegedly.
That's insane.
Yep. And I'm not even sure that happened in this country. It's an old story. You know, I should probably look that up or something. But I do know that those microwaves can be used as weapons. So millimeter wave devices where it feels like a hot light bulb is pushing against you. I have read things where those things can be millimeter wave weapons. Those things can be tuned. So basically they vibrate at a certain frequency that just like messes with your heart and liver. Whoa. And then you get that at a low dose several times. Now, I don't know if that could be just pumped through these 5G towers or through these cell phone towers, you know, to hit people, but they can have this cannon from a truck. It can be within a few hundred foot of your house, from what I understand, and it can point this at your house, set this on the frequency to cook your organs, and you die a couple days later of congestive heart failure.
Oh my God, that's so scary.
And, you know, it's like nobody knows. But also, you know, there was a CIA gun that was famously being held by these senators, I believe in the 70s. I can't remember what this thing was called, but it was basically a gun that you could shoot somebody with, and it injected some kind of poison in them, and it killed them. And there was no mark left. You pierced them with like a little needle or something. And I'm sure somebody could call in and tell us, all about that scandal. But yeah, there's and it is definitely not cool that they're like bragging about how the budget for the military is going to be $1 trillion.
Oh yeah, I did hear that. I don't know why it didn't surprise me. I thought for some reason it was more than that anyway, honestly.
But I've been predicting for a long time, hard pendulum swing to the right.
Yeah. So
they're going to be looking to recriminalize and probably do a lot of marijuana, psilocybin type enforcement. I would imagine.
That because there's been this whole push where ever since 2020 when Oregon decriminalized all drugs.
Yep.
There's been this huge like push. It's like I always, when I see the same people saying the same thing, or when I see different people saying the same things over and over, and it seems like they're repeating each other, feels like it's being pushed on me, where there are people saying like, oh, Oregon should have never done that because look how Portland is. When Portland, it has worse gun laws than even the rest of Oregon, and Oregon's in the Cato freedom of the 50 states, it's number 35 for gun rights. Oregon in general, and then Portland has even worse gun laws. They're all welcoming to homeless people. So they have a bunch of people that are there who are
useless, have no value.
Parasites.
Right.
That want to just do drugs all day. So that is why it's so bad there. It's not just because, oh, anytime you decriminalize drugs, things always get that bad. That's not, like, people are using that as like, oh, look, that's why drug decriminalization is bad. And it's like, you are acting like this is happening in a vacuum. Like in Portugal, when they decriminalized all drugs, there wasn't anything going on like Portland, where you can't even walk down the street. So
the whole west coast of the U.S., California, Portland, Seattle, has pretty mellow weather, pretty much year round. Portland's Portland, Oregon is way warmer than Portland, Maine. I can guarantee that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like a really good petri dish for cultivating degeneracy. People who want to lay around and do nothing because the weather is pretty mellow. So you're not going to cook to death in the summer like you are in Florida,
or freeze in the
even
winter.
in California, or really freeze. And then you have like a culture, like bacteria. If you feed it a whole bunch of sugar, for example, or fungus, it's just going to grow like crazy. So we might as well call the sugar government subsidies.
Yeah.
So now we're subsidizing the heck out of this degenerative culture by giving it money, by providing porta potties for it, providing services for it. Even the Narcan is like, Narcan. I mean, start letting these junkies die. As far as I'm concerned, they're not getting any better.
And I actually saw a conversation, with somebody who did recover from heroin, and he uses his Twitter to talk about it for people, and he even tells them he doesn't recommend people getting on Kratom, and I'd have to agree. I don't recommend people get on Kratom either, and I famously, if you listen to Free Talk Live, famously used to use Kratom, and now I'm completely not on it anymore. And I did say I got off it and went back on it, but that's because I went way too fast. I went super slow after that, and now I'm just off Kratom, and it's been fine.
But the thing is, with
and he says, he wouldn't recommend Narcan either. He's like, just don't even do it.
So with the Narcan, I'm not saying that Narcan should be banned, but kind of like with the whole abortion Planned Parenthood thing, people who own land shouldn't be forced with threats and violence to pay for.
I mixed that up with methadone. He was saying don't use methadone to go off it. Narcan's the one that revives you after.
Right, Narcan revives you after you've overdosed, and so the first responders are constantly getting called to Narcan people. And I was a firefighter, and I know a handful of first guys that work for this AMR, it's called, and also work for some towns and cities. And anyways, these junkies that are overdosing on whatever, fentanyl, meth, whatever it is, they're Narcamming them, and oftentimes when they Narcan these guys, they are really pissed that they got that their high is gone, because it basically zaps your high. So they come back, and then they want to get violent because you just ruined this dude's high. I mean, this is what this guy's been looking forward to, for a long time in his mind.
It was like in Pulp Fiction. Well, she doesn't get mad, but she wakes up and she's in a, she gasps, and she's awake, and she's energized.
Yeah, and all the people, literally all the people that are getting put in body bags because they've overdosed are on some kind of social assistance. And this whole thing of subsidizing poor people, subsidizing drug addicts, that's all you're going to get is more poor people and more drug addicts.
Yep.
But fentanyl is essentially just a modern day saber-toothed tiger. It's just, if you can't, outrun the saber-toothed tiger, or outsmart it, or stay out of its way, or not get involved with it, or, you can't fight it off, it's going to kill you 5,000 years ago, right? Today, nature is working, as fentanyl.
I think the starting point, and trust me, I'm very anti-homeless people, especially on Twitter. I'm always getting attacked for my anti-homeless rants, because the thing is, like, I'll try to take a walk with my dog in my pretty, like, it's not like I live in like a rich neighborhood, but a quiet, cute, nice neighborhood, and I can take a walk and go down like 2 roads from here and be in a place where I'm just like, yep, not gonna walk down that street today because there's freaks just like loitering around, like walking back and forth, pacing, talking to themselves and weird crap like that. And so I say all that to say that that's why I don't like homeless people. I've literally had a homeless person, I guess the word is battery me, not assault me, because he threw a lighter at the back of my head, but that was in San Antonio. Isn't that battery instead of assault? But whatever.
Yeah, I think assault is threatening that you're going to batter somebody, and battering them is actually hitting them, battering them. But anyways, yeah, all the homeless people I've pretty much encountered, and I've had some friends that have been like homeless for like a short period of time.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
like
I feel like that's different, and I have also had friends like that.
Because it's usually like a guy that's gotten divorced, and he's living in his van, he's living in his car, whatever. He's gets a camper, he's at the campground. I know a lot of those guys, and due to their divorce circumstances, they can't afford to pay 2 mortgages and take care of 2 houses, so they're living in a camper or whatever, or they're homeless. Some of them, it takes them a few weeks to get another house, so they're just going to be couch surfing with somebody. But like the people who are like chronically homeless and living out in the street, they're all pretty much mentally ill, and a lot of it, I've met some homeless people that I knew 20 years ago, and they were just like, kind of like they were just into drugs and partying and alcohol, and now they're straight up homeless, and it's like, and they're not right in the head. You could tell that basically the drinking and the drugging has just basically put a bunch of holes in their brain.
Yeah, I know multiple people that like a whole bunch of LSD has messed them up to where they're really crazy. I know 3 people like that, and I've never done LSD, and I feel like I believe it should be legal. I think you should be able to get drugs from the grocery store, but I personally would never do that one because it's just like it's created in a lab somewhere, and yeah, you can like get your LSD tested, but even if it's pure LSD and it's all good to go,
it's still synthetic. It's not a plant medicine.
Exactly.
For sure.
And that's why like I honestly don't really want to do DMT anymore, because I didn't really think of it like that at the time, but now I'm like I don't want to do ayahuasca because that just sounds really scary, like throwing up and all that stuff. And I don't want to do DMT that's just, some kind of weird black stuff.
It's synthesized also.
Exactly, yeah. I would totally recommend if somebody wanted to do one of those things for them to do just real mushrooms. And it's less scary anyway. But it can be scary. But anyways, I was going to say, I think the starting place with homeless people is actually to just get rid of the welfare. And I think that the people who can't hack it probably will die, because people are always like, what? You think we should just let people die? Actually, yes, I legitimately do. I think that I shouldn't have to, it's not even just, I shouldn't have to take care of them. I shouldn't have to live in a world where I can't take a walk with my dog, where it's less safe, where it's disgusting. In Brattleboro, there's poop on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
You go 25 minutes away from Keene, and you cross the imaginary line that actually does mean something, because it's the imaginary line between New Hampshire and Vermont, and you're in a city where there are way more homeless people and poop on the ground.
So Brattleboro, Vermont, is basically the same size, has, I think, less 1/3 the population of New Hampshire. Vermont is like 800,000. New Hampshire is like 1.4 million. And Vermont has 3 times the budget
for homeless,
for the government budget. 3 times the budget of New Hampshire.
Crazy.
And they have, it is. Vermont's pretty insane. And all those Vermont cities have turned into quite literal cesspools. So I'm 45 years old. I remember going to Brattleboro, Vermont, going out with friends to Brattleboro, Vermont in my early 20s. And
it was probably so nice.
It was wicked nice.
It's pretty.
And now, we wouldn't dare go to Holyoke, Massachusetts, because there's a bunch of Section 8 housing that was put in there, so it was like a slum. In the 60s and the 70s, Holyoke was a beautiful city. So was East Springfield. They put in a bunch of Section 8 housing. They imported a whole bunch of people from Puerto Rico. There was whole campaigns in the 80s and the 90s to basically get the freeloaders out of Puerto Rico. And so what had happened is
Wait, to get them out of Puerto Rico and put them in Massachusetts?
in Massachusetts, yep, and just start
weird.
filling up projects with them.
That's weird.
Aspen Street, Ware, Massachusetts. So anybody wants to internet search that was a place that was turned Ware into a total S-hole town for a lot of years. Holyoke, Mass, and now like Brattleboro, I was there, I don't know, 2 years ago. We took a little walk through there. Yeah, and pride flags everywhere. The whole woke mind virus is totally, made its infection all through anywhere in Vermont that is any kind of city, any city. Vermont's super woke.
I always hear that Burlington's super bad. I've never been there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of pride flags everywhere. I don't know, it was 3 or 4 months ago. We had to go see a friend down by that way, and we're talking about driving through Brattleboro, go to their house, and my wife's like, "Oh, I think there's a really good restaurant in Brattleboro I'd like to go eat at." And I says, "Well, if they don't have a pride flag, maybe we'll stop and eat there."
Did they?
We drive up to it. There's a pride flag, and we just put the truck in reverse and left, and we went and ate at somewhere in just over in a New Hampshire line there. What's that town?
I'm not
where
sure.
Nikki lives.
Anyways.
Hinsdale, yeah. We ate at some place in Hinsdale.
Whenever my mom and little brother were here, my 11-year-old little brother, well, he's 12 now, but he was 11 at the time, I took them to Hogback Mountain, just something to do and look at. And then we had to drive back through Brattleboro, and my little brother, he likes to take pictures, so he's like taking pictures of things, and he was like, another pride flag. Flag. He's like, that church had pride flags on it. Like that shocked him because they live in Alabama, and there's pride flags in all the churches up here.
Yeah. And what we're doing is we're making life way too comfortable for degenerates. I really like what Jeremy Kaufman has to say about making it uncomfortable for liberals in New Hampshire. And
I like that part,
we need
too.
to start making it needs to be uncomfortable for degenerates. Stop comforting them, stop subsidizing, stop giving them money, stop rewarding them for being losers, and let them die. And most people, when they're about to die, when they hit rock bottom, they straighten themselves out.
Yeah, that's the thing. It would be actually like beautiful stories would probably come out of getting rid of welfare. It's not like I just want these people to die. It's not like I just hate these people and want them to die. I think there'd probably be some beautiful stories of people that pulled themselves back up out of absolute filth. And it's like, this isn't an actual life when you're living on the sidewalk, sleeping at night, and every day all you're doing is being completely drugged out of your mind, living in filth, you smell bad. Alex Jones was telling this story about just throwing up because of the smell in Baltimore in the slums. More Free Talk Live coming up. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live coming up. Don't go anywhere. It's Free Talk Live.
This is novelist Tom Robbins. When my mother was diagnosed with glaucoma, her conservative Virginia physician told her there was only one treatment that might ease her pain and save her eyesight. That treatment was medical marijuana, which he could not prescribe. I offered to get her some and teach her how to use it effectively, but my father objected because marijuana was against the law. So my mother, who loved to read and walk in nature, was condemned to grow cruelly, unnecessarily blind. Tragedies like this happen all the time, but they don't have to keep happening. To learn more about medical marijuana, call the Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or visit them on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Over the last week, US President Donald Trump's raft of tariffs led to tumbles on global stock markets, with shockwaves sent around the world. Stocks recovered somewhat by the end of the week, particularly following moves to pause tariffs for 90 days to give room for negotiations. European leaders welcomed the move to put a temporary halt to the duties. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the pause an important step towards stabilising the global economy. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Brussels.
Ursula von der Leyen says Europe remains ready for talks, but only under fair and predictable conditions. The shift comes after the EU announced tariffs on $24 billion worth of U.S. goods. The White House says the extra import taxes for Europe are on hold as the EU's countermeasures have not come into effect yet. They are scheduled to be collected from April 15th. The EU will still be subject to the U.S. 10% base rate tariff that came into force on April 5th. Pablo Gutierrez, Brussels.
Well, China is the exception to the tariffs pause, now in line for tariffs up to 145%. The Chinese president has called on the European Union to join it in resisting coercion as US trade tensions grow. Xi Jinping spoke on Friday after China raised its own tariffs on US goods to 125%. Ross Cullen reports.
As China's trade war with the United States escalates, Beijing is hoping to work together with the European Union to counter Donald Trump's global tariffs. China and the EU have an uneasy relationship, with EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles already in place, plus Chinese taxes on exports of European brandy. But Xi Jinping has called on China and the EU to jointly, quote, oppose unilateral bullying practices. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Authorities in the Dominican Republic have called off the search for survivors following the roof collapse at a popular nightclub that killed more than 200 people. Ira Spitzer reports.
Breaking into tears at times, the head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center said Thursday would be the last day of rescue and recovery efforts at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital, Santo Domingo. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jet Set's roof collapsed with hundreds inside. The death toll has now risen to at least 221 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, a local governor, and merengue artist Ruby Perez, who was performing at the time. 189 people were rescued from the club. The focus now shifts to mourning the dead and what will be a closely watched investigation into what caused the roof to collapse. Ira Spitzer.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control. That means you can call 603-283-6160 to bring up whatever's on your mind, talk to all the people listening on the radio, and get your whatever you want to say out to the people who listen to us on podcast form afterwards. It's up to you, whatever you want to talk about, 603-283-6160, and we do have a caller on the line, but first, with you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
And J Noon.
And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear, like t-shirts and hoodies, actually literally put one on during the break, are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny, liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And let's go straight to the phones. Dave Ridley in Colorado, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, guys. Well, I'm kind of embarrassed that it's taken me so long to find out that this happened, but apparently I was just listening. I listened to the Carla Gericke show. Carla Gericke is a free stater who lives in Manchester. She's frequently run for New Hampshire Senate.
Yeah.
I think about 3 runs for New Hampshire Senate. And she, I go through the show and I kind of listen to it 6 months after she put it up on the air, or maybe a year after. I just kind of go through and do a batch download every 6 months or every year or something like that of all the interesting things she's talking about. But I guess I was listening to one of her shows. It sounded like it was in early 2024. And she reported, and you guys may have already reported this too, but apparently somebody tried to kill her. At least she thinks somebody tried to kill her.
I wasn't aware, actually.
Did not hear that. Was not aware.
What she said happened was one day she got in her car and she said all the lug nuts on her wheels had been loosened. Now, could something like that happen accidentally, or could she be wrong, or whatever? Anything's possible, but
unless the car that something was worked on where somebody had recently removed that tire, changed brakes, the tires put on, or something like that. I've definitely had wheels loosen up on me, and I've done lots of driving, all different kinds of stuff. I've had and you have to retorque them after you get your service done, but just for them to loosen up and no work was done, that is extremely suspicious.
I only listened to this podcast once through, so I was a little vague on what happened before the vehicle was taken in. But I think what happened was for some reason her husband took it in to have it looked at or something right about that time, and that's I guess when they discovered the lug nut issue.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I've had wheels fall off of trucks before driving down the road.
Wow.
The last time this happened to me was 4 years ago. I had a guy working for me, and him and I did front brakes on my truck. And I got about 45 minutes from home, and the truck started shaking. I just pulled right over, and all my lug nuts on the right wheel were, I could spin almost all of them with my fingers. So I had tools with me. I tightened them up, and both the front and the left front wheels, the right and the left, weren't tight. But one side was shaking. So if it just all of a sudden starts shaking your car, you need to pull over immediately, because it doesn't take long, especially if you got aluminum rims, for that aluminum get all chewed up, those lug nuts to get fatigued and break.
Oh my God, that's terrifying. Well, that's like the examples you're giving are like one tire at a time. Do you think that it's likely for all of them to be loose at once?
Were all of the lug nuts loose, or just one wheel?
That was the impression that I got. That was all four.
Oh, okay. I missed that when you said that.
That's really creepy.
And I probably didn't introduce her very thoroughly. She's a free stater, and she's also, I think she's a prominent NH exit activist. So she's a New Hampshire secessionist, and probably gotten more attention than any of the rest of us who are.
She's been on the Dr. Phil show talking about secession.
Correct. And she also reported that her tires were slashed previously, and around 2022 she reported death threats. So that's all I know. It's just kind of basic what I heard from her podcast, but it's kind of an elephant in the room, when someone in your movement possibly suffers an assassination attempt.
Well, so we have a bunch of woke, retarded liberals that have this Trump derangement syndrome, essentially. And I call them libtards for short. But like, one thing I can say about my interactions with people, and I present myself as a free stater, which I really like to do because I like to sort of get a read on who I'm dealing with. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, people don't know what free stater means. Most of the time. But the only kind of people who are negative about free staters are career parasite class people. So whether, and by parasite class, I want to be specific, government employees, and not all government. Well, so technically all government employees are parasites, but like the guys who plow the road and stuff, for example, the DPW workers, where they have like useful skills.
They probably don't care about free staters as much.
Well, they're all of those guys, like, they're very conservative, they're very libertarian leaning. They just been waiting 20 years to get this sweet job working for the states, and they finally got it, so they're doing it because there's a lineup of basically mowing.
Do they get like pensions? Like,
oh yeah, they got all
people.
Yeah, they got all that stuff. And so and a lot of people kind of, their retirement goals, their goals in life are to have a state pension, golden parachute pension, because the state just points guns at people and says pay more taxes to make the pensions work. Mm-hmm. So anyways, but the like heavily regulated government industries to where you need to have all this schooling and you need to fill out these permission slips and get licenses. A lot of those people I consider parasite class too, which would be a lot of like your financial, your medical, and a lot of those guys have proved, to the powers to be, that they can be, withstand all this indoctrination and do everything that the state wants them to do and jump through these hoops and fill up all these paperwork. But it's not so much it seems to be only the public sector parasite class, not so much the private sector, The public sector parasite class really, really dislikes free staters, like big time.
I would be so shocked if like a public school teacher was okay with what's going on.
Right, because basically, anyone who understands the free state movement, mission statement is to move 20,000 people into New Hampshire and get elected to government positions and reduce government to its maximum authority, its protection of life, liberty, and property. Well, that means basically there will be no pension funds for these people who've been working for pension funds. There wouldn't be all of these, jobs. There's no reason to have all the administrators in the schools. There's no reason that every time a state building is built on a taxpayer dimes, it is the most expensive possible way it could actually be done.
They're always asking for more money for their respective group they're working for. Like the cops, they will literally go to decriminalization bill hearings and say, we can't have this. We can't decriminalize marijuana or whatever it is because it will cost our department money.
Right, and it costs our department money because the business plan of these police departments is collecting financial incentive money, just like the business plan of DCYF is collecting the Title IV financial incentive money that the Social Security Administration pumps to the to DCYF and the pension funds of the judges and other state employees. In Massachusetts, I had a cop tell me who became friends with me. This is a guy who arrested me. He was a state trooper. Him and I we've been friends now for like 15 years, and he told me that the reason that the state troopers are so aggressive about writing tickets for like registration related things, such as not having your car inspected, not having a registration, certain things like this, not so much like actual violations, is that particular money from someone didn't get a registration or an inspection sticker, when that has matching contributions that somehow come from some other entity that goes directly to their state police pension fund, is what he told me. And there was some other things that were written in tickets, certain types of tickets, not so much speeding tickets, because speeding tickets are the most popular ones, so they're the ones that are most scrutinized. But basically, a lot of these cops are like really hell bent on making sure that if you're like been in Massachusetts for a while, you have a Massachusetts plate on your car. And actually, that's how this guy and I met. He was investigating me as a state trooper for having New Hampshire plates when I lived in Massachusetts. And they never got anywhere with me. And then after he had retired, he started like telling me about this stuff when we'd run into one another. But yeah, so the parasite class really hates us, and we know that the parasite, the parasite class of these woke, useless libtard types that they don't even want to do anything, and they just been brainwashed their entire lives. They're buying the whole narrative, between the public schools, the universities, and the algorithm, teaching them to, be divisive, teaching them to hate, and like excusing violence against conservatives.
That's huge right now.
It is huge right now. And people in New Hampshire, if you are going to be trying to be violent to people directly, there's a good chance that you get shot, because a lot of people in New Hampshire
So that's why they would do such a cowardly move, like try to loosen the bolts on her tires.
Yeah, which hopefully she's got some security cameras there.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
And one of the things that I often do when I haven't driven a truck of mine in a while, I try to do it often, is check my lug nuts. I walk around with a torque wrench. I change tires a lot and things, but and just being familiar with what it looks like. If you ever see like dry black dust, if you have aluminum rims or coming out from your lug nuts, that means you got a loose lug nut. If you have steel wheels on your car and you see dry red dust, which is rust dust, that means your lug nuts are loose.
Interesting.
So people should be looking at things like that.
Well, anyway, if you want to hear the original podcast or her original report on this, she's at carlagericke.com. Gericke is spelled Gericke, carlagericke.com.
Okay, that's how you spell it? I guess I had it wrong. I wrote it down wrong. But you can also find her pretty easily on Twitter, Carla Gericke, and I'm sure she's got like a link tree or something. She's a really good activist. She's been helpful with Ian when we did a free iannow.org. What do they call those things? It's a press conference. She spoke for Ian. It was so nice. and really has been helpful getting the word out about that. And she had an interview with some, I think it was these French documentarians recently, maybe some other people even. It might have happened twice recently. And she told them about Ian, and even called me and had like me talking to her as part of her interview with those people, so that way I could talk about Ian instead of having to like travel to Manchester to talk to those documentarians. So that was nice. She does a lot of good stuff for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to have Carla around. I support her, and she's done a lot of good for Free State movement, for the freedom movement. She does a good job with her podcast. She's a really good writer and speaker.
Yeah, I've read some of her like blog things, but I haven't actually watched the Carla Gericke show. Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, it's good and it's pithy. Yeah, she's very good with words and her unusual takes on things.
And whenever she gives a testimony for a bill, it's always really good. She always writes it out. Yeah, she's really good at that.
And she's a good shot. Don't mess with her.
Oh, really? Nice.
Oh yeah, I've shot guns with her before.
Nice.
So, and that's the thing.
Also,
everybody in New Hampshire pretty much carries.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all of the women I know have guns, and nobody knows it on them almost all the time.
Yeah, the other day I was with a crowd of, I guess, 4 girls and me, and there was this crazy person outside of the restaurant we were at that came up, and actually I was like apart from them for a second to let my dog pee, and the crazy woman walked up to them and asked for like, it sounded like a scam. She was like, I need help, my car's broken down, but she was acting like a drug addict and stuff, and she's creeping them out. And then I caught up with them without encountering the crazy lady, but they were kind of creeping me out. They're like, there's a crazy lady out there, but it was all good because one of them, I didn't even know it the whole time, one of them was armed, but concealed carry. So
you feel better when one of your friends are armed, right?
Yeah, so I was like, oh good, when we go back out there I won't be so scared to pass her. Yeah, it's
nothing to add.
Thank you for the call, Dave. That's Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com if you'd like to check out more from him. And yeah, I'll definitely check out Carla's show. There's multiple times during the week where I'm just like, I need something to listen to while I'm doing dishes, and I'm like, what do I want to listen to? And that's why I mentioned Alex Jones like twice in last hour or last segment, which feels weird. Like I've just been listening to him a lot recently because I don't know, he has like so many topics that I wouldn't even know were going on if I didn't listen to him. Because he's like, I just like don't like to watch the news. Like that's not the medium I like to get information from. I like to hear somebody talking. Even in school, I always got good grades because the teacher always tells you all the answers, and I hear it and I just don't forget it. And other people are like, oh, I don't know. They need to see it written down or something.
Getting the news in the form of an Alex Jones rant is pretty entertaining.
Exactly. It's so funny.
So it's entertaining and it's informative. And Alex Jones has a really, really good track record.
I know.
He was just dead on accurate about the gay frogs.
And he actually predicted 9/11.
Sure.
I only learned that recently. I never knew that he accurately predicted 9/11, like exactly what was going to happen, because he was just on Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson kept saying, like, that needs to be the first line in your obituary, Alex Jones. You're the only person who's done that. You have some kind of a gift, and more people need to be, like, shocked about that. I was like, I just never even heard that. I didn't know it was true at all.
So I think Alex Jones got going in, like, 92. I graduated high school in 98, and one of the things I did in high school is I was part of the media program, so we would run the morning announcements, and so I would be able to like play things on the media. And then we had the local, it was called Palmer Munson Public Access. And Bruce McKay was the guy who run it back in the day, and he was a cool guy. So basically anybody who submitted anything, you bring a VHS tape down to them, and as long as it didn't have any profanity, they would play it. So I would bring Alex Jones clips, videos in of newscasts, and I would also bring in some of his documentaries he did back in the day. And other ones, G. Edward Griffin had one about vaccines that I put, and I even played these things in like the school, like after, so after the announcements, like or after school was over, you could like play stuff and it would just broadcast on all the TVs that were on in the school.
Whoa, that's so cool.
So we would do some stuff like that, and I would do some Alex Jones things, and then Alex Jones was quite, and I remember when 9/11 happened, one of my best friends from high school who was currently in the military, he called me up that day, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to Iraq." He knew that day.
Whoa.
And he goes, "What do you think?" I says, "Well, I think it's an inside job. Alex Jones called this. He's been predicting this for years." He's like, "I knew you were going to say Alex Jones said."
Whoa.
and even my military buddy, who I haven't seen him in 10 years, but we talk 3 or 4 times a year for the past several years. And he's like, "Yeah, man, because you called all this stuff." I'm like, "Nah, just mostly listening to some Alex Jones and just paying attention to some things." And
I think that like they have purposely locked down cool stuff like that for schools, because like when I was I think a senior, I was the vice president of my school, and I got to do the announcements, but it was lame. I just got to be the voice. Like I got to read the announcements.
Yeah, I didn't really.
They didn't let me do anything fun.
I wasn't behind in front of a camera. I was the producer as a senior, but basically I started doing it when I was in 8th grade. So
maybe it was people like you, like doing it was too free. They were like, "Oh no, this is some information freedom, and we want monopoly on this. We're gonna start making everything much more lame." Like there's no such thing as like AV classes in the 2 high schools I went to.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All that stuff sounds really
cool. And actually,
cool.
This was extracurricular, so it was before and after school. And so, like, I did a lot of editing of football game footage, basketball games, things like that. We'd put promos together for like football and soccer, and it was when I was editing Super VHS, tape to tape, back 1998, and shortly after that, I was getting digital. But digital was still really expensive back then. And yeah, that was fun. It's way easier to edit a video now. I just sort of have a hard time figuring all the tools on these video editors.
Yeah, if you're used to something else. Yeah, Ian is really good at video editing, and it really frustrates me when something goes wrong. It ruins the whole thing, and I don't have that kind of patience to be really good at it, but I guess I can get it done. Also, I have an Alex Jones high school story kind of too. When I was in high school, we got to choose for this one assignment like a current news article, and we had to give a presentation in front of the class. And I probably wouldn't even remember this, but I chose an article off of Infowars.com. It had something to do with like privacy. It had to do with like video cameras in all the cities, something like that. And he was talking about like, oh, we're losing our privacy. And that's what I did my presentation on. And I wouldn't even remember that probably, except that I got actually bullied. Like there was this girl, and it wasn't like, oh, and I felt sad inside. I literally went up to her with my friends and told her off, so it was fine. But there was this girl that started telling everyone like, I swear she smokes crack. She's like a crazy person, and you should have heard all this crazy stuff she was saying, because I did the Alex Jones article. It wasn't even in my opinion like something that was like out there. I wasn't talking about the reptilians, you know? It was so weird the way that like some people reacted. Like there was this one girl in my class that like it was like a discussion. Like we talked about privacy, and then the class got to raise their hands. And there was this one girl that was just so mad she could barely like get out what she was trying to say, just because her idea was like, well, if we don't have cameras on all of us at all times, what if somebody gets shot? And I don't know if somebody in her life had been shot, and she was personally getting angry at me for being like, well, I don't think we should have like 100% safety with the expense of, our privacy. And she was so mad she like couldn't talk anymore and had to like look away from me. It was insane. I think people are actually crazy.
That's the kind of people I don't want my kids and my kids' peers to grow up to be.
Exactly.
So that's somebody who obviously lacks confidence. And people who lack confidence also lack competence, so they're not competent. So
she acted like she wanted to get violent because of my opinions.
Oh, maybe, but obviously she wants government to take care of her.
That's true, exactly.
Because she lacks confidence, and that's what a lot of women in general lack confidence, and a lot of girls. Even
though she was like a big volleyball, basketball player girl.
And that doesn't matter. Body build doesn't matter. It's it's the mindset. It's do you have confidence? And I think it's really got to be instilled in you long before.
Well, we were all in public school.
Long before your brain's done developing, and women's brains are done developing at about 25, 26 years old. Men somewhere around 21. So, and it's the best return on investment in building confidence in people is before they're 6 years old. So I tell people all the time, that's the best ability to learn. And one of the best confidence, the things you can do is like basically light farming, raise chickens, eggs, hens, and gardening with your toddlers and your young kids. I just really gets the confidence going at a young age, and then you can work into a little more tricky kind of skill set work, iron work, welding, carpentry work. With kids that are over 7 years old, they're all capable of doing that stuff.
They'll probably just choose things they want to do too.
Yep.
Just yesterday, I listened to a podcast by these girls, the Strong Sisters. They run a farm in Michigan, and one of them just got married in October. They're sisters, and they're like my age, and they started a farm together. First generation farmers. It's not like their parents were farmers. They just wanted to be able to eat food that's actually like good for them the way that they wanted to raise it. And so they've been doing that for 5 years now. And when they started, they were like, they didn't get their periods because they were like, they used to be insane like bodybuilders and like didn't eat enough food. And so they healed their actual metabolisms and ran a farm for 5 years. One of them got married, and she's just announcing that she's like, well, not announcing, but she was telling us on the podcast that she's like going to try to have a baby. And she was saying that she doesn't think, even if she did have her period the whole time, she doesn't think that she was anywhere near mentally confident that she could have like start a family until those 5 years of farming, because of all of the like personal growth that it brought her. Like she said she never really encountered death, and now she's encountered death like hundreds of times and just had to become really a lot more just like grow. She had to grow
and
spiritually.
exercise her nurturing. That's very important for women.
That's a really big thing. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live, and you can call in with whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160. When we come back, there is more news about the U.S.-China battle that spares no one and the weapons Trump is talking about. More Free Talk Live coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Over the last week, US President Donald Trump's raft of tariffs led to tumbles on global stock markets, with shockwaves sent around the world. Stocks recovered somewhat by the end of the week, particularly following moves to pause tariffs for 90 days to give room for negotiations. European leaders welcomed the move to put a temporary halt to the duties. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the pause an important step towards stabilising the global economy. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Brussels.
Ursula von der Leyen says Europe remains ready for talks, but only under fair and predictable conditions. The shift comes after the EU announced tariffs on $24 billion worth of U.S. goods. The White House says the extra import taxes for Europe are on hold as the EU's countermeasures have not come into effect yet. They are scheduled to be collected from April 15th. The EU will still be subject to the U.S. 10% base rate tariff that came into force on April 5th. Pablo Gutierrez, Brussels.
Well, China is the exception to the tariffs pause, now in line for tariffs up to 145%. The Chinese president has called on the European Union to join it in resisting coercion as US trade tensions grow. Xi Jinping spoke on Friday after China raised its own tariffs on US goods to 125%. Ross Cullen reports.
As China's trade war with the United States escalates, Beijing is hoping to work together with the European Union to counter Donald Trump's global tariffs. China and the EU have an uneasy relationship, with EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles already in place, plus Chinese taxes on exports of European brandy. But Xi Jinping has called on China and the EU to jointly, quote, oppose unilateral bullying practices. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Authorities in the Dominican Republic have called off the search for survivors following the roof collapse at a popular nightclub that killed more than 200 people. Ira Spitzer reports.
Breaking into tears at times, the head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center said Thursday would be the last day of rescue and recovery efforts at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital, Santo Domingo. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jet Set's roof collapsed with hundreds inside. The death toll has now risen to at least 221 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, a local governor, and merengue artist Ruby Perez, who was performing at the time. 189 people were rescued from the club. The focus now shifts to mourning the dead and what will be a closely watched investigation into what caused the roof to collapse. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Ukraine's president claims that more than 150 Chinese nationals are fighting alongside Russian forces in Ukraine. The announcement comes after Kyiv said earlier in the week that 2 Chinese citizens had been captured. William Denslow reports from Odessa, Ukraine.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has precise data that more than 150 Chinese nationals are fighting with Russia, but claims the real number is far higher. In a social media post, he says this is a deliberate step towards expanding the war and accuses Russia of dragging out the fighting. China claims a neutral stance on the conflict, and its foreign ministry says claims that there are significant numbers of its nationals fighting with Russian forces is unfounded. Beijing adds that citizens are urged to stay away from conflict zones. Zelensky calls on Ukraine's partners to deprive Russia of the ability to continue the war, including through using soldiers from other nations. William Denslow, Odessa.
A US-Russian citizen who was jailed in Russia for donating money to a Ukrainian charity has been freed in a prisoner swap. The former ballerina transferred $51 to an organisation that Moscow says was raising funds to provide arms to the Ukrainian military. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The amateur ballerina lives in Los Angeles, but visited the Russian city of Yekaterinburg in early 2024 to visit family members. During that trip, she was detained by Russian authorities and sentenced to 12 years in prison. She was exchanged for a dual German-Russian citizen, Arthur Petrov, who was arrested in Cyprus in 2023 for allegedly exporting electronics to help the Russian military. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
The Surgeon General warns teens the Cinnamon Challenge is not for pussies. Taylor Swift is now dating the Watertown boat, and a middle-aged funeral director buys a flashy red hearse. We pity your pathetic dependence on this for your weekly news, but here we go anyway. This is the Onion Week in Review. A study released this week by the National Institutes of Health confirmed that for the 25th straight year, wolf attacks remain the leading cause of death in the United States. The Human Health Agency's findings confirmed that being viciously killed by a ravenous wolf claimed the lives of over 800,000 Americans last year alone, with researchers adding that one person in the United States dies every 40 seconds from a violent wolf attack.
The mortality rate associated with wolf attacks vastly outstrips the death tolls of cancer, stroke, and chronic respiratory disease. People should know that anyone... Oh, Jesus, no.
This is the Onion News Network. Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160. I'll say that a little slower. 603-283-6160 is the phone number. And I'd like to thank Marcus for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Marcus went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks again to Marcus and everyone who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. So we do appreciate everyone who supports the show in every way. And thank you again to Marcus. With you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
And Jay.
And we already have a caller on the line. So again, that's 603-283-6160. And let's go straight to the phones. Turd Ferguson in Pennsylvania, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Just briefly, you'd be really mad at me if you saw the frame that I froze the TV on with your face on right now. You'd want to kill me. And I'm sorry about that.
Whatever. I don't care.
I'm becoming the greatest DJ of all time very rapidly.
In whose opinion?
Everyone's opinion that's heard me DJ.
Wow.
And you know, I gotta say, I made a mashup last week of Katy Perry's Teenage Dream, which is of course the greatest song ever written, mixed with Mike Posner's Cooler Than Me. So it's the beat of Cooler Than Me mixed with the vocal line of Katy Perry's Teenage Dream. And it's just an absolutely amazing song that I might actually release publicly, but
I want to hear it.
Yeah, I might do you a solid and drop it in the chat, maybe. I don't know, or I guess you don't even go in the chat anymore.
I can. I want to listen to this now. There was like a revival of Mike Posner's Cooler Than Me in, I think, 2016. Everybody was listening to it again. So I feel like you kind of missed that opportunity. And it was because he came out with like only his second ever song, the I Took a Pill in Ibiza song. Isn't that him? Or am I mixing that up?
I think that is him, but yeah, but Mike Poss is actually pretty cool. He likes Reason, which I also like. I think it's an amazing doll.
Wait,
so
what?
Anybody that likes Reason, I really respect.
What do you mean it's an amazing doll?
It's an amazing digital audio workstation. So Reason is like one of the original beat making dolls that was around. Yeah, and I'm having a really great time at the club. I'm not gonna lie, I'm just having a blast.
You work at a club now? Playing, like, DJing?
Yeah, I'm a DJ at a club. And the young ladies that I work with, although, well, I would never tell them to their face, although I kind of have to say that they're hot over the microphone, which I don't really like complimenting women, because it makes me feel like I don't know what the right word is, but I just don't like it. Because I just don't want them to think that I think they're pretty, you know what I mean? Even though I usually do with most pretty women. And, but I would never tell them to their face. But
Jay probably
they're,
could
like,
give you
a
some
lot-
advice about getting a wife since you seem to have trouble with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be looking for one at a strip joint for sure.
Yeah, start there.
Well, yeah, I have no desire to get a wife.
No, why not? How old are you?
I'm old enough to have a wife, and I don't want one. See,
Well, I
here's
mean,
the thing.
are you 21 or 51? Because like,
He's much older than
I'm
me.
neither of those.
Okay.
I'm neither of those. But I got to say, and maybe it's just because, like, by the time I was 21, I'd basically lived out, like, all my fantasies in the bedroom. But I just never had enough desire to actually get married. Because why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
He asked us for advice to talk to this girl from his gym like a couple months ago, and he wouldn't listen to any of it, and he let the guy that he said is much more beta than him end up with that girlfriend or with that girl.
Well, I think they were already they were already dating anyway. I mean,
Well, he couldn't take her.
Clear.
So it's about a lot more than milk. Like seriously,
No, I disagree.
Building
Now, if you're
a
a guy.
building a relationship with somebody, having a family with them, is very important because family men,
Yeah, if you want kids.
family
If you
people
want kids, that's fine.
are very stable. Family people are going to fight and protect for the good of their family, the good of their community. They want a good community, and
I fight and protect for numero uno, and it gives me a lot of gives me a lot of purpose.
and
Does
then
it make you a parasite to your neighbors?
Why would I be a parasite to my neighbors? I
Oh,
don't
I'm just
ask-
asking.
not.
I'm asking. I'm
As a matter of
asking as
fact,
long as
I-
it doesn't, like, then,
Oh, as long as it
then you
doesn't.
should be good. I'm not saying, I'm
Yeah,
not claiming
well,
it
I've actually
does in
helped
your
out-
case.
I've actually helped out my neighbors on a myriad of occasions. And one time I actually got one of them to the hospital one time before something really bad happened. So I think I'm actually a pretty nice guy.
So maybe
I
you're
didn't have
not
to
just
do that.
looking out for yourself. Maybe you're just
Well,
putting out
I
a
am,
front like
because
that.
I did it because I knew it was the right thing to do, and because it would make me feel good afterwards to know that I did something nice for someone else.
You
So
know, even without kids, there's a person, I guess I probably shouldn't say their name on the air because I didn't ask them for permission to tell this story, but they had a stroke, and there was somebody I know in the community, and they were saying, oh, I would highly recommend the investment of a wife, by the way, because of how all the crap that happened to him once he had this stroke, and his wife was there to always take care of all his needs, including bring him to the hospital at all, so he didn't die.
Well, I think that's. I mean, if you're on the verge of death, it might be a good idea to have somebody there. Of course,
You never
if
know when you're
wanna
going to be on the
remain
verge of
single-
death. This person isn't like 80.
Well, if they're having strokes when they're young, it's not good. You know what I'm saying?
You don't know when something crazy is
Ari-
not going to happen to you. It doesn't have to be a stroke. You can take as a lesson from what I'm saying without it being like, oh, you're about to have a stroke.
Okay. Well, anyway, yeah. There's this one. Actually, there are a bunch of really attractive young women at this club that I work at, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, a lot of them I probably would sleep with. I doubt that I would ever want to make any of them my girlfriend for obvious reasons. Although a lot of them have actually been particularly just exceptionally nice to me, and I'm really appreciative of it. There is this one older woman who takes her clothes off there, and I don't want to say she's old. She's like old, but she's older than I am, and she's got a great pair, if you know what I mean. And I was trying to do the math based on how long she said she'd been doing that, and she's got to be at least in her late 40s or maybe early 50s, but she looks good. And you know, yeah, and it's been nice chatting with her, if you know what I mean. And it's funny, like a lot of these girls come up to like talk to me, you know, while I'm DJing, which is distracting, but it's okay. Like, I don't want to make them feel like what they're saying to me isn't important or anything, but it is a little distracting. But also a lot of them come up, you know, half naked, and then that's like distracting in and of itself alone. Like if they were just up there not saying anything, it would probably still be distracting. but it's really fun. And yeah, I'm really falling in. I've had my NS7 III from Newmark, my DJ controller with motorized platters, so it actually feels like old real vinyls for a long time. But I never really fell in love with it the way that I did a bunch of my MIDI controllers, like my Native Instruments Machine and all that stuff. But I don't know, lately I've been really like starting to fall in love with it seriously. And yeah, Bonnie, I'd really like you to hear that remix of Teenage Dream.
Yeah, I was gonna say definitely send me that because I want to hear it. Sounds interesting. But
I'm glad you're having fun, Turd.
Yeah, I'm glad you're having
My
fun.
father always said, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right, and that's got to be one of the most important things, that we are fulfilled in whatever we're doing.
And actually, he did quit his like normal job to pursue this type of thing. So if you're doing something that's more in line with what you're passionate about, I am happy for you. I just hope you don't end up with a stripper, even though you're saying you're totally impervious to it. I know people who have had their whole lives ruined by marrying strippers, especially military guys. And I honestly think it's like what Jay says. They're like low confidence, especially Air Force. They're like the worst. They're like low confidence. They have to score the highest on the ASVAB, so they're usually like the smartest, but they're always like small in stature for some reason, like almost all of them. And then they're just like the nerdiest, and they just like have no personalities. It's like, what were you doing your whole like even just high school career before you decided to join the Air Force? Because they all are like almost like blank slate boring.
They've been being programmed to be drones.
Yeah.
Pawns.
And I say all that to say, why did I say that? Oh yeah, I knew an Air Force guy that married a stripper, and all of his stories. Wow, she was really crazy. And then they had a kid together, so that, you know, ruined basically his rest of his whole entire life. Like, then his son is being like raised half of the time at least with this drug addict stripper. Because I mean, a lot of times they're drug addicts, not every time, but actually, I know some reform strippers too. So there is that.
Reform strippers, huh? I heard there's no such thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I know at least one of my best friends used to be a stripper, has 2 kids, a husband who's awesome.
I know a handful of strippers that are good, thriving moms doing a good job. One of them a couple years ago was working in some hoppin' diner, and she's like, wow. She goes, I'm making more money at 30-something years old at this breakfast diner.
She was still being a stripper.
No,
I see.
just as a waitress at a breakfast diner.
Sorry.
Than I was making at being a stripper when she was in her early 20s.
That sucks.
And she's a good-looking girl anyways. Well, you know, it was up in ski country, and it just, you know, she was making tons of money, and where she was being a stripper was at, you know, a real dive, you know, in the ghetto in Springfield, Massachusetts. So
it's so weird to me that there's only one strip club in New Hampshire, but I mean, I'm glad there's not more. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, we need a whole bunch of strip clubs in New Hampshire, but it's just so weird. There's the one.
What if you take the strip clubs in New Hampshire equals there's one strip club for 1.4 million people, and how many strip clubs there are in Massachusetts, and what the population of Massachusetts is, because there's strip clubs like everywhere in Massachusetts.
Yeah. So, anyways, I don't really know what to say for Turd Ferguson about his call, because I want to hear that song that you made, but I don't really have anything else to say about his personal stories about that. So moving on. The US and China are going to economic war, and everyone will suffer. Definitely is the case, it seems like. It seems like they're both harming their own people at each other, which doesn't really make any sense. And that just makes me think like neither one of them can be stupid. You know, the leaders of neither side are stupid, I don't think. So it seems like it's like this setup thing, like it's just the globalists doing what they do. So basically they're both putting tariffs on things coming into their countries, which is just costing the consumer on each side some money. And we just had Colin join us here on Free Talk Live.
Hey everybody.
So I don't think that they can be. They're just so stupid that they don't know that that's the case. They're just costing their own people every time they up the tariffs on each other, and it's gonna do nothing but harm each other, or harm themselves. But they're acting like, oh, we're being strong and harming the other country.
The problem is there's no in today's global manufacturing, you know, marketplace. there is no such thing as free trade. So we literally cannot have free trade with a country that has millions of slaves and actually really skilled craftsmen as slaves, doing all kinds of things. And there's all these horrible stories about Uyghur Muslims that are being, fed a bunch of organic food while they're slaves. And then these guys are doing all kinds of work. Like one of them is, peeling garlic for like Christopher's Ranch garlic, which is in pretty much every grocery market in the United States. Garlic is a huge export for China.
Oh.
I actually like the idea that food prices could go up drastically because, and I want to see the food subsidies stop. But but anyways, like this garlic that comes out of China that's dirt cheap. It is all processed by slaves. One of the stories I heard that some investigative journalist went there that the slaves were Uyghur Muslims that were fed an organic challah diet, and then they harvest these people for their organs at a specific age, and they're selling the organs to basically a whole bunch of very rich oil baron or Arab types. There's a whole market of whatever organs you want, so you can get organs that are certified halal. Which I guess is they haven't ate any pork and they're just feeding them organic food, and they're using them to do things like strip garlic because they don't want them, working in Foxconn assembling phones using, lead and cadmium and stuff like that, getting all sick. They want, these oil sheiks want to make sure that they're getting good hearts and livers and lungs transplanted into their, themselves, their wives and their children, and stuff. So there is no free market. And the price of food, I actually think about doing a presentation somewhere about this, or maybe a rant at Pork Fest about the price of food. Like, how lucky would my kids be? And since I'm like kind of selfish, I really just care about my kids and their generation. I don't really care about anybody else. So I just like to focus on them. That's why I do a homeschool co-op.
You
for
don't
them.
care about me?
I only care about you because you're my friend.
Oh,
but
okay.
anyways, and actually I do care a lot about a lot of things, but what I most care about is my children and their generation is my highest priority. So how cool would it be if food was so expensive and got so expensive that everyone's kids had to participate and work and make sure that every square inch of the property they had or the yard was planted in some kind of food? And then everybody could do a whole bunch of fasting, which would be really good because we're mostly a bunch of overweight Americans.
I think a lot of them are just going to steal. They're going to be like, there's a garden in Jay Noon's yard. No, they'll probably not try to go in your yard, but
they'll do it more for the
Keene.
people who are growing vegetables and stuff like that, like suburbs and places like that.
Yeah,
they're not going to go so much
Keene.
out to the barbs to do it.
But the thing is nobody's the kids are just. What they're mostly doing in the urban and suburban areas is they're just melting their brains, getting TikTok brain. They're just chronically programming themselves to only get their dopamine hit from entertainment. And then, in a lot of rural families doing that too because high-speed internet's there and it's a cheap, easy device to as a babysitter. But if food got expensive to where it was actually the real cost of food, which I'm going to say is double what it costs in Whole Foods basically, or at least what it cost in Whole Foods for like beef. And pork, like for example, I send a pig out to be processed. It costs me about $2.20 a pound, $2.50 a pound to get that pig killed, gutted, cut, packed, and the bacon smoked. Right about somewhere between about $2.25 a pound. I can go to my local grocery store and buy pork chops for $1.98 a pound all the time. I can buy bacon for $3.99 a pound at the local grocery store if I buy a 5-pound thing of it. And this is all because of government subsidized factory farming, and all that pork is essentially horrible for you. It's in the grocery store, especially with the microplastics. And actually, pork's really pretty much bad for you anyways because pigs can't they can't shed a lot of toxins that are in the environment and in the food.
Does it come out of their feet?
Well, I don't know if it comes out in their feet, but they don't sweat. That's why they got to lay in mud all the time.
I heard that there's like a thing next to their feet that like excretes nasty stuff, kind of like the lymphatic system, but it just comes out.
I'm not aware of that. I'll have to look into that.
But that always grossed me out because my mom told me that when I was a kid, and I already didn't like to eat meat, so that's why pork was like my number one enemy.
But when you're putting really good inputs into pork, and you're only raising a few of them, you can make a real high quality meat and very clean meat. And actually, the guy who butchered my last pigs was like, "Wow, this is the nicest pork I've ever cut."
When I first ever had bacon from your farm, I was like, "Whoa, I actually like bacon now." Like,
Yeah.
I used to just think I didn't like bacon.
And they're fed on a forest. They graze on a forest, and I also give them lots of charcoal. I make a bunch of charcoal.
Oh, that's cool.
And so when I give them charcoal, David Avocado Wolf was all talking about charcoal. I'm like, I got some charcoal stories for you. But like charcoal, it neutralizes a lot of toxins. It absorbs a lot of toxins. It kills a bunch of parasites.
That's so cool that you do that for them.
And pigs, chickens, and the cows, they all love eating charcoal. They'll just like, I throw it in buckets and they eat it.
Wow.
And
that's a really good sign.
yeah, and my butcher was like, "Wow, what'd you feed these things? I've never just seen it just so clean." And he's like, telling me about how the liver looks really good and everything in the liver was nice. And I'm like,
I've been taking charcoal, so that makes me feel good.
Yeah, my stepdad would grill, and I wouldn't eat the steaks. I just eat the charcoal.
There you go.
Nah, just kidding. That stuff's that stuff's really bad. The charcoal that most people use, it's like chemically processed.
Yeah, so you got to have like pure, and I make it all myself, just out of my wood boiler.
But that's not the same thing as what you're talking about. You're talking about more like almost an activated charcoal type
Basically.
compound. Yeah.
And the only difference between what I'm making basically biochar. And the way I make that is I have a large outdoor wood boiler, and in the spring and in the fall, it basically just idles. It doesn't call for heat. And it's a huge system. And I put a bunch of wood in it, and it's more like a kiln this time of year. And then I have 3 or 4 metal 5-gallon buckets, and I take the hot coals and I shovel them out of the stove every day. And I fill up these buckets, and then I take the buckets and I quench them with water very shortly, a couple minutes after I fill them, and then I've been dumping them out on a bunch of rocks around, big flat rocks around my house, and we rinse them off. And then we're starting to actually put it into buckets and seal them. So when I shut off the unit, and I'm actually going to fill one of these grain bags with charcoal also. I get these 1,000-kilogram grain bags. So when I'm not going to burn in the summer, but I'll be feeding chickens, pigs, and cows all summer, and I want to make sure that they have basically a container of charcoal, and they can just go eat charcoal whenever they want. And this is a really good thing to do with goats, pigs, sheep, all kinds of mammals. There's tons of studies on how charcoal, it just has so much beneficial stuff. And the only thing that I could do to make my charcoal activated is what the industry does. Well, there's many things they can do, but what all the industry does is they steam the charcoal for 10 minutes to further clear any volatile chemicals out of it or anything like that. But I don't steam it. I just, rinse it off with water.
My activated charcoal that I take, it says ozonated on it, and I'm always wondering what that means.
So that's an ozonated activated charcoal. So that has some kind of like ozone.
Well, they probably treat it with the ozone. The ozone doesn't stay there, I wouldn't think.
And so if you take ozone, like the guys, Colin and I were in Mexico, Acapulco, and I actually did IV ozone therapy. You saw me sitting there with a needle in my arm, and that guy was pumping straight up ozone gas right into my veins.
Whoa.
And it kills all kinds of funguses and stuff in your body. And you could feel that ozone going in there. And I was a little concerned about it at first. So like the ozone generator, like the Eden Pure, that is a different type of ozone than if you have an ozone generator where you're using pure oxygen as your base to make the ozone from. So those guys had an oxygen tank.
Okay.
We'll talk about that more later.
Interesting. Free Talk Live is more coming up. 603-283-6160. Call in with whatever's on your mind. That's 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
You know how annoying it is when someone keeps stopping mid-sentence as though he or she were asking you a series of questions? Avoid doing that. It sounds unnervingly tentative, and it imposes upon the listener to help you complete the thought. And if you're a job seeker, this alone could be a deal killer. An effective communicator sounds more confident. Complete the thought. Avoid making the listener impatient. With money and attention so scarce now, Effective communication skills have never been more important. Cutting through the clutter rather than blending into the blah, blah, blah will help you connect better no matter what the conversation. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook. Survivalspeech.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Over the last week, US President Donald Trump's raft of tariffs led to tumbles on global stock markets, with shockwaves sent around the world. Stocks recovered somewhat by the end of the week, particularly following moves to pause tariffs for 90 days to give room for negotiations. European leaders welcomed the move to put a temporary halt to the duties. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the pause an important step towards stabilizing the global economy. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Brussels.
Ursula von der Leyen says Europe remains ready for talks, but only under fair and predictable conditions. The shift comes after the EU announced tariffs on $24 billion worth of U.S. goods. The White House says the extra import taxes for Europe are on hold as the EU's countermeasures have not come into effect yet. They are scheduled to be collected from April 15th. The EU will still be subject to the U.S. 10% base rate tariff that came into force on April 5th. Pablo Gutierrez, Brussels.
Well, China is the exception to the tariffs pause, now in line for tariffs up to 145%. The Chinese president has called on the European Union to join it in resisting coercion as US trade tensions grow. Xi Jinping spoke on Friday after China raised its own tariffs on US goods to 125%. Ross Cullen reports.
As China's trade war with the United States escalates, Beijing is hoping to work together with the European Union to counter Donald Trump's global tariffs. China and the EU have an uneasy relationship, with EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles already in place, plus Chinese taxes on exports of European brandy. But Xi Jinping has called on China and the EU to jointly, quote, oppose unilateral bullying practices. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Authorities in the Dominican Republic have called off the search for survivors following the roof collapse at a popular nightclub that killed more than 200 people. Ira Spitzer reports.
Breaking into tears at times, the head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center said Thursday would be the last day of rescue and recovery efforts at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital, Santo Domingo. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jet Set's roof collapsed with hundreds inside. The death toll has now risen to at least 221 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, a local governor, and merengue artist Ruby Perez, who was performing at the time. 189 people were rescued from the club. The focus now shifts to mourning the dead and what will be a closely watched investigation into what caused the roof to collapse. Ira Spitzer.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. You can call in with whatever is on your mind. Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that will be visible in the Odyssey chat for members only. And again, that's video.freetalklive.com. Click join at the top of the page. And thanks so much to everyone who supports us. With you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
Colin.
And Jay.
And Jay, you wanted to tell people about, you have more information about the Anarchapulco thing?
So Anarchapulco was an event we went to. There was a lot of body healers there, a lot of great information. I wanted to tell you guys that you can go to anarchapulco.com and you can buy the replays of Anarchapulco Ascendance. Joel Salatin spoke there, Marjorie Wildcraft, I spoke, a guy named Andrew Kaufman, he had a really good presentation. Christopher Gronsky did a really great presentation. Also, there was the Beaudre Fraser of the I Heal Collective, who are some very special body workers. They did some body work with me, my wife. They're also the guys that provided the ozone IV therapy, which is look into that. That's really cool. I know it's legal in Arizona. I talked to a bunch of people in Arizona, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we do that all the time. You know, it's a couple times a year. Blah blah blah. Helps us out. Been doing it for years." And I don't know if I guess it's not legal in 14 states. So I was like, "You guys should come to New Hampshire and try that. You know, and do this." I would like to see at PorcFest more body work getting done. But anyways, if you wanted to really catch up on some stuff and learn on some things. One thing that's really awesome about Anarchapulco is they have a really high quality film production crew all set up there, and they record audio and video, and you can watch replays of these these presentations and speeches that are really good. And if you do, I would ask that you use my promo code JAY at checkout, and you will save 10% off of your purchase. And I also wanted to tell you guys that Man Camp will be happening again at PorcFest this year.
Oh, good. Nice.
So if you check out, go to my website, jaynoon.com. That's JAYNOONE.com. And my mission is essentially that Generation Next is useful, valuable, and competent. And if you want to donate to my mission at jaynoon.com, there are some QR codes.
Wait, do you mean Gen Z?
Generation Next.
Oh,
whoever
sorry.
Generation
I thought
Next
you said
is.
X.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should make that more clear. So our posterity to be useful, valuable, and competent. It is extremely important for our comfort as old men and old women and everybody listening to this, that the next generation is useful, valuable, and competent. So that's my Man Camp mission. And that
Seems
starts
to have
by
worked out fine for the boomers to just steal from the young people, so I think I'll just start stealing.
I don't know how the boomers are really stealing from the young people. I mean, so the boomers I know, a lot of them have worked pretty hard.
Well, they're the ones with all the pensions, and they
whatever.
They're definitely
they messed up the economy after buying the houses, so now they have all the houses, but they have no reason to get rid of them.
It might be. You are picking up on something there. How do you steal from the future, right? And so that is like not
Security.
necessarily, it's still not really possible. You can't take anything that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah,
but I can tell you this, at least, it is true that they're not doing the steps that all the previous generations have done, which is to leave more for their children than they started with. They are cannibalizing everything, taking just everything they can with them. They're not. I mean, the number of like boomer parents out there who say things like, "I'm not leaving my kids anything," when they actually had inheritance from their parents. It's kind of like disgusting,
Luckily, I don't have boomer parents. My parents are Gen
Yeah,
X.
I mean, when my dad passed away, he, left us a farm that was promptly stolen by the state, which is, unfortunate. But, that's what happens when you're living on a slave plantation and you're forced to pay property taxes. And those are just one of the realities we got to deal with until, such said parasite is not able to do that. If that's a goal, please come to New Hampshire, join us here so we can stop this parasitic thing called property tax, for example. And but yeah, there's definitely a lot of issues, and a lot of boomers are also living longer than they thought they would, and a lot of them have invested basically in pension funds and not in anything real. So there is no inheritance to leave behind. They were sold as bill of goods. These pension funds, to where before pension funds existed, you invested in your livestock, your house, maybe precious metals, a business, things like, even if you have, stocks and business investments, like your heirs can inherit that, but they can't inherit the pension fund. And that's what most people have. And then what happens is the medical stuff really beats the crap out of them because they've been basically following the advice of the food pyramid.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I mean, one of the, you know, biggest disinformation campaigns I think I was ever exposed to was in our, I don't know, it was a health class. They were talking about, oh, you should be mostly eating grain and a very little meat. And, you know, this whole food pyramid thing. And even right in the Scott Forsman book or the Scholastic whatever book where it was talking about nutrition and health and dietary stuff, the food pyramid in this book I got from like 1997. I was in high school. It's actually my stepmom has it. The food pyramid page where it shows it on the bottom corner, it says, brought to you by the American Grain Growers Association.
Wow.
So now we have...
Yeah, well, it's not from the, health department. It's from the USDA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, no, the Grain Growers Association.
Well, yeah, they might have originally generated it, but it being from the government, as far as the government using it, it's not from like the health department or anything like that. It's from the agriculture department.
Right.
They're the ones that are putting it out.
Yeah, and all the guys in agriculture are former, Monsanto guys, former Cargill guys. Cargill controls 90% of the world's grains. Archer Midland Daniels, they're another huge agribusiness. These are all the major, corporate, agricultural welfare whores, these huge corporations. So yeah, they push all this propaganda. So we got a whole bunch of sick people that just believe whatever doctors tell them. They've been essentially, programmed to believe whatever the doctors are telling them. And the doctors have all been programmed essentially by, Rockefeller medicine. They're programmed by Big Pharma. They're educated by Big Pharma. And Big Pharma don't make money unless you're sick. So one of the things that happens with a lot of the boomers and a lot of people, the generation that would be previous to boomers, I know so many people who had basically their wealth was in their house, a little bit of a pension, and some kind of stocks and savings. And they get very sick and they got to go into a nursing home. And the nursing home, after 6 months, pretty much wipes out all of their assets. So this is why another thing people need to look into is, their houses and stuff shouldn't be in their names, really. They should be in the name of possibly a trust or something. Because you get sick and get put into a nursing home. Or
they'll take all your money from
you really need to be
house.
Putting
or take your house because you owe money.
Putting your home and your assets into your children's name. Or somebody you've invested into heavily if you don't have any children. That's one of the things, talking with Turd there earlier. He's like, I don't want any kids. And it's like, well, what are you going to do when you're old? You're going to become a ward of the state, dependent of the state at some point. So I don't care how libertarian you are, how anarchist you are. If you don't have children, at some point, you are going to become a ward of the state. You are going to become a dependent, especially if the state exists.
I also have a lot of siblings, though.
What's that?
I also have a lot of siblings.
Okay.
They'll probably have a lot of kids.
Really?
One of my siblings is 16 years younger than me, and I'm his favorite person.
Okay. That's good. And hopefully, you can make an investment. But people who don't have children, I need to really make these investments in our posterity and long-term investments. Like these rich or wealthy dual income, no children people, for example, I'm sure they can find a friend that's like a struggling, hardworking family, and they could be like, all right, we got these assets, we got this, we want to, we're giving you a piece of the pie, we're helping you out, and
as an investment,
and you're gonna take care of us when we're old and wipe our butts for us, or hire a nanny to do it if you don't want to wipe our butts, but you're not just going to shove us in a home and pawn us off on a system. And then there's a whole bunch of single men that I know of that are older, that aren't going to have any children, and they're 60 plus 70 years old, that don't have any children, don't have any wives. They're single men. I know at least 24 of these guys from years ago and recently. I've met them, and they don't have and they got a lot of stuff to leave. They're wealthy. I mean, as a guy, if you're not distracted by a woman and kids, and you put your head down and plow and just keep on working and grinding, you can amass a tremendous amount of wealth. And then, so it's those guys should find a family to adopt too. And then you have some women that are
even without this idea of having to adopt families, if you just look at what people did, 50 years ago and more, they would belong to like different kinds of associations
or fraternities
and things like that would take care of them, and those would have medical like insurance policies and things like that.
Is that illegal now?
It's there's been a change in the culture, and people just don't do that. I mean, I'm talking about
used to government doing it.
Yeah, various things, kind of like Elks Lodges and Moose Lodges.
Knights of Columbus was one example that Patrick Bet David was talking about this. Where,
actually, it's interesting. Manchester, New Hampshire was full of like tons of these sorts of things, and they were somewhat ethnic. Like one would be like for Polish people, another one would be for the Germans and whatever. But they also, as private organizations, had their own bars too, and because they were member bars, they didn't have to abide by the regular rules, so the people could just stay there as late as they wanted and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, and they still exist. But I would for a while I did like pizza delivery in Manchester, and when I was doing this, I would deliver to these places. They're like empty. They're like great giant halls that could house like 100 people or whatever, and not house, but have 100 people in them, and there's like hardly anybody there anymore.
Yeah, there's like 5 French American clubs. They're all different clubs. There's a Albanian club. I used to plow their little parking lot and shovel their sidewalks for them, and those guys were all pretty cool. They definitely had like the most intense coffee I ever drank in my life. I get the jitters. But anyways, and then there's also there's an Italian club. I know in Springfield, Massachusetts, there was there was Polish clubs, Italian clubs, all around there, Irish clubs. Boston, there's a handful of many Irish clubs that are basically the same situation. But yeah, there isn't much for community anymore, and there isn't much for fellowship, and that's like something that's got to be returned also as fellowship, and kids got to be programmed at a young age to like get a dopamine hit from fellowship. Like
it would be so great if there were churches that weren't religious that were around more often. Like I know I run a church, and you don't have to be religious in it, but like maybe I mean that is kind of a goal of mine this year to do some things. So making it not about my own church, it would be great if it was more common for there to be things that were like churches but not religious. Like our co-host sometimes, Riley, well, oftentimes Riley, he is not religiously part of the LDS anymore, and he started going to the Mormon church here because he said he just misses the fellowship. And I feel that way sometimes as a person who was raised in the Christian church. That was always like honestly, that's one of the best things about my childhood, was that we were homeschooled for the first like several years of my life, and or several years of my schooling. And the main thing we would do is like go to church with a whole bunch of other kids. And I feel like I gained social awareness without, so people act like if you homeschool your kids are going to be weird, but I was always around tons of kids.
Wait, that's what we want though, right?
Yeah,
we don't want them to be normies,
right?
Well, you don't want them to be normies.
They would always say that. They always say that they're gonna not have the ability to interact with people. But it's usually they have a better ability, even in the cases where it's not like a group of homeschooling people, but even when it's like just like a single family, like raising.
Yeah, I was never in a homeschooling group. It was just my group of siblings.
Well, because if you think about it, there's nothing more unnatural than learning to socialize in a public school where essentially you're stuck in a room with 30 people who are all the same age. Mm-hmm. Where else in the world have you ever been where you're in a room and everybody's all like within a year of the same age? Nowhere. Like you go to work at a company, you're going to have people who've been there for years.
They don't even do that
with
in prison.
Experience. Yeah, it's not in prison. Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that actually makes school worse than a prison in a way. You can actually learn something in a prison, as far as learning it from other people, through their experiences. But no, yeah, I mean, homeschooled kids, even if they're with their parents and the parents go out into the world, they're going to interact with people of different ages, and there's something inherent in that.
So when these pro school, lefties are like, oh, you're homeschooling your kids, they're not going to be socialized.
It's stupid.
Well, that's real. Projection, because the thing is it is the public school kids who have the problems with integrating and socializing and dealing with adults, especially with people who are of a different generation.
Yeah.
There is very much a clash because they're being programmed for 15,000 hours from the time they're 4, if you can do in school education, all the way till they're basically 18 years old. And then if they stay in college, it's more of the same nonsense.
There's something else you'll notice too, like people who go to public school and all that, they'll have this problem where like they'll say this, especially in terms of like dating, like, oh, that person's younger or older. What will I have to talk with them about? And it's because their cultural references are so segmented to just that time that they were in like high school. Like, because basically there's this saying that like, can you pour water from an empty glass? Well, no, you can't, because there's nothing from an empty glass. So if you have a room full of people who are all the same age, how much can they know? They can only know what the other ones already know. And where are they learning anything? Well, they're either learning it from each other or they're learning it from like the TV when they go home.
This is kind of specific, but when I was a kid, I used to always get annoyed when I heard other kids, even in my grade, say, we learned that in 3rd grade. I was just like, that is so, I don't know why it annoyed me. It's like a thing where I'm like, I might have learned that before you. Why are you telling me this? Like, we all are one and we learned that. It's like, it could be something like, I'm like, hey, what temperature does water boil?
But
like,
they have this problem. They can't communicate with older and younger people. The cultural references aren't there. But I mean, in a more natural environment, you're going to pick up stuff from all sorts of different, generations and time frames and things like that. You're actually going to be a more complex and unique person. Because even though you might interact with one old person and one young person, they're not the same old person, same young person. So you'll get different bits of each of them. If that makes sense.
I feel like it's pretty well known that homeschool kids are better at talking to adults.
Right, because they're generally treated like adults.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who are treating their kids like babies, I've noticed, are ones that got to go work at the cubicle, drop the kid off at daycare, and then they literally see their baby for a few minutes in the morning and, maybe an hour or two at night, not even. And so their basically interaction time is all this like baby talk, baby stuff. And, one of the things I don't do with my kids is I don't treat them like babies at all. In fact, my wife says to me once in a while, Jay, they're just babies, or Jay, they're just kids. And I'm like, get back up and keep on stacking the firewood, guys. Come on. But, the thing with fellowship is doing work. Like the Amish would be a really, really good ally in some kind of like, ish hit the fan situation in this country. There's a lot of Amish in Vermont. There's a lot of Amish in New York, a lot of Amish in Pennsylvania. There are actually starting to be some Amish in New Hampshire too, which I really like. Amish.
Really? Where at?
They're Mennonites. They're up North Country.
Okay.
But Mennonites are just Amish light, basically. They'll drive cars and stuff. And but the Amish have really good fellowship, and the thing. Like the skills that you can have children do, like the skills I'm having kids learn at my homeschool co-op, a lot of it involves fellowship. So when you're stacking hay, when you're sowing seeds, and you're doing it with many other people, you're splitting firewood, you're raking the leaves, cleaning things up, you're chatting and BSing with each other and talking about stuff, and you're giving each other instructions or pointers or helpers, or the bigger kids are helping the younger kids with their skill. And the schoolhouse that I like the classic schoolhouse in America before this Department of Education and all this garbage, but the schoolhouse that there was like 100 years ago or 120 years ago was you had, and especially it was like these villages and towns that had one schoolhouse. You basically had like the 14-year-old kids that were really good at reading teaching the 6-year-old kids how to read. And the 14-year-old kids that were really good at math were teaching younger kids at math. And essentially the teacher was just kind of making sure everything was going right and cool, and that the kids weren't teaching the younger kids bad habits, the older kids. And then that is really missed out in today's modern education system, the whole other side of the brain. So like one side of your brain is excited or activated when you're learning the information. And then you have to use the other side of your brain to express that information. So like I got really good at riding a horse, really good when I started teaching riding lessons. And same thing when I first taught my little brother how to ski. I had been skiing for like 2 years. Right after I gave the first time going skiing with my little brother, I think he was like 6 or 7 at the time, and I was, probably 15 or 16. I taught him how to ski. I just got way better at skiing because I use the other part of my brain to express it. And it's the same thing when you teach someone how to weld, you teach someone how to ride horses. teach someone how to crochet, whatever, skill you have, even if it's like teaching them plumbing and stuff like that.
You learn when you're teaching too, because you'll always get a question like, well, why do you do that? And then like sometimes you're like, oh, wait, actually, why do I do it that way? And you're used to just doing it and doing it let's say the correct way or the way that you're used to doing it. And then you get this question, you have to think about it for a minute, and you'll actually learn stuff. You'll be like, oh, that's right. This is why we do it this way. Because somebody's questioning you,
Oh yeah. It's like a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at a blown tire on one of my trailers, and my 3-year-old son goes, Dad, why don't they make the tires out of something better than rubber? And I'm like, well, actually, rubber and steel is really good. And I kind of went through tire history on him, and and he was like, yeah, you don't want biased tires on your trailer. He's telling one of my friends the next day because they don't have any steel cords in them. But yeah, the kids have actually awesome questions. And when I've done this blacksmithing, I can, with kids that are 6-7 years old at different places, I can tell if they're public school kids, and I can also tell if they got TikTok brain right away. And I tell you, the homeschool kids really they are the best to work with, and the most difficult are college graduates. At PorkFest several years ago, there was a group of people, and they were all in their 20s, and I'm like, oh, how much schooling you guys did? Oh, I graduated from this college at this, that, and the other thing. Okay, yeah, you guys are like way harder to work with than the 12-year-old homeschool kid that just left here, or the 8-year-old, and they're like, what do you mean? And they were they never did any that kind of work. I mean, they were really nice people. They were at PorkFest, they were checking it out. But they were a bunch of, they were very educated, college grads in their 20s. And it was really difficult getting them through blacksmithing. I had a way easier time with a 7-year-old.
Are you saying it was just harder for them to learn, or they were like goofing off?
It was really difficult to like convey to them like how to like hold a hammer. Like these guys, first off, didn't know how to swing a hammer. So when you teach a 7-year-old that's never swung a hammer before how to swing a hammer, they do it pretty good and they do it right. But when a 20-year-old has, the only time they've swung a hammer is because they've had to hang up their, artwork on the wall at their, apartment or in their, college dorm.
Yeah.
They don't have any clue, and they've learned a lot of bad habits. And it's like, oh man, you're gonna break my hammer, dude. Big strong guy beating the crap out of my hammer, and not having a hard time. But I've just noticed that definitely the homeschool kids are way better when it comes to like blacksmithing, splitting wood.
I was concerned that this Free Stater baby sitting next to me, sitting in front of this bowl of nachos, was going to just grab it and throw it on the ground. And instead, she was just, and I mean baby, not child. Instead, the baby was carefully taking the chips and eating them, and I complimented the dad. I was like, I was really like kind of nervous about sitting next to this baby in your lap, and like that she was going to throw the nachos everywhere or something, because I've seen stuff like that, and it's making me think that
you can't even get me not to throw them.
I want to say, I really think these babies, like, they're more regulated. It's like, imagine being overstimulated all the time because you're inflamed and everything. More Free Talk Live coming up.
Free Talk Live.
I use the downsizedc.org system for responding to my Congress critters and talking to the thieves and liars and despots in Washington, D.C. And in these letters, they outline the issue for me. Then they flush it down the toilet. And it's so demeaning. Yeah. They just don't care what I think. I can tell them,
he'll pretend like he cares if he's trying to get elected.
They only care what you think if you're giving them a check with, 5 digits on it. Then you might be able to get them to do something.
Yeah.
But that's just one senator among the 535 disgusting, dishonorable thieves. What's a guy to do? These lobbying groups, they run Washington. Washington has been taken over. It does not belong to the American people. It doesn't do anything for the American people. It is a bad, bad place.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
Protection.
Eleutheromania, the insatiable desire for freedom.
Filibuster. Police state.
It's the new 3-song heavy metal EP from Captain Kickass. Available now on your favorite music app or get it directly from CaptainKickass.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Over the last week, US President Donald Trump's raft of tariffs led to tumbles on global stock markets, with shockwaves sent around the world. Stocks recovered somewhat by the end of the week, particularly following moves to pause tariffs for 90 days to give room for negotiations. European leaders welcomed the move to put a temporary halt to the duties. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the pause an important step towards stabilising the global economy. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Brussels.
Ursula von der Leyen says Europe remains ready for talks, but only under fair and predictable conditions. The shift comes after the EU announced tariffs on $24 billion worth of U.S. goods. The White House says the extra import taxes for Europe are on hold as the EU's countermeasures have not come into effect yet. They are scheduled to be collected from April 15th. The EU will still be subject to the U.S. 10% base rate tariff that came into force on April 5th. Pablo Gutierrez, Brussels.
Well, China is the exception to the tariffs pause, now in line for tariffs up to 145%. The Chinese president has called on the European Union to join it in resisting coercion as US trade tensions grow. Xi Jinping spoke on Friday after China raised its own tariffs on US goods to 125%. Ross Cullen reports.
As China's trade war with the United States escalates, Beijing is hoping to work together with the European Union to counter Donald Trump's global tariffs. China and the EU have an uneasy relationship, with EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles already in place, plus Chinese taxes on exports of European brandy. But Xi Jinping has called on China and the EU to jointly, quote, oppose unilateral bullying practices. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Authorities in the Dominican Republic have called off the search for survivors following the roof collapse at a popular nightclub that killed more than 200 people. Ira Spitzer reports.
Breaking into tears at times, the head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center said Thursday would be the last day of rescue and recovery efforts at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital, Santo Domingo. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jet Set's roof collapsed with hundreds inside. The death toll has now risen to at least 221 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, a local governor, and merengue artist Ruby Perez, who was performing at the time. 189 people were rescued from the club. The focus now shifts to mourning the dead and what will be a closely watched investigation into what caused the roof to collapse. Ira Spitzer, San Francisco.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Ukraine's president claims that more than 150 Chinese nationals are fighting alongside Russian forces in Ukraine. The announcement comes after Kyiv said earlier in the week that 2 Chinese citizens had been captured. William Denslow reports from Odessa, Ukraine.
President Volodymyr Zelensky says he has precise data that more than 150 Chinese nationals are fighting with Russia, but claims the real number is far higher. In a social media post, he says this is a deliberate step towards expanding the war and accuses Russia of dragging out the fighting. China claims a neutral stance on the conflict, and its foreign ministry says claims that there are significant numbers of its nationals fighting with Russian forces is unfounded. Beijing adds that citizens are urged to stay away from conflict zones. Zelensky calls on Ukraine's partners to deprive Russia of the ability to continue the war, including through using soldiers from other nations. William Denslow, Odessa.
A US-Russian citizen who was jailed in Russia for donating money to a Ukrainian charity has been freed in a prisoner swap. The former ballerina transferred $51 to an organisation that Moscow says was raising funds to provide arms to the Ukrainian military. Nick Harper reports from Washington.
The amateur ballerina lives in Los Angeles, but visited the Russian city of Yekaterinburg in early 2024 to visit family members. During that trip, she was detained by Russian authorities and sentenced to 12 years in prison. She was exchanged for a dual German-Russian citizen, Arthur Petrov, who was arrested in Cyprus in 2023 for allegedly exporting electronics to help the Russian military. I'm Nick Harper in Washington.
I'm Caroline Malone in Washington, and that was The Week in Review.
Frustrated with his increased workload and a litany of interpersonal problems, CLG software project manager William Garston brought a list of grievances Thursday to his supervisor Todd Watkins, an utterly powerless office functionary with no actual ability to resolve any problems.
Oh, no. I'm really glad that you're bringing this to me. This is great.
The 15-minute interaction, which was taken seriously by both parties, involved Garston laying out a series of work-related issues he's had recently, absolutely none of which Watkins has even the slightest authority to address.
Again, I'm sorry to be bothering you with all this stuff, Todd. I've reached a point where I was not under the... This is important. We're gonna sort all this out.
Sources added that throughout the conversation, Watkins continually nodded his head and repeatedly assured Garston that his problems would be considered a top priority, despite the fact that he lacked the necessary clout to foster any change whatsoever within the company.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And with you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
And Colin.
And Jay.
And we have lots of stuff to talk about. And 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160 is the phone number. You can call in about whatever's on your mind. If you want to say something about what we're talking about, that's fine. Or if you want to change the subject, it is up to you. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive.com can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Social.freetalklive.com. And in the last segment, I was telling the audience that China and the US are going to economic war and everyone will suffer. And that's really what I think.
Some more than others.
We can talk about like some predictions, but this from the Wall Street Journal says, the gloves are off. The next chapter of US-China decoupling has begun. The pain will be felt everywhere. In jacking up his tariffs on China and pausing steep duties on dozens of other nations. Oh yeah, because basically he paused all of the other things. He paused all of the tariffs except like he's leaving 10% on
And I just saw like 5 or 6 hours ago a news thing. Maybe it happened a little earlier than that, but that there's going to be exemptions for
tech stuff.
Well, specifically like iPhone and I forget the other one, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and the reason why is because those are U.S. companies. So if a U.S. company has to pay tariffs to get their stuff imported into the U.S., then the U.S. company is going to lose out. So that's the reason why. It's just,
I guess he cares more about companies than the people.
Because they're U.S. companies, though.
Yeah, I know, but U.S. people are going to be having trouble anytime they're buying anything from another country that's being tariffed like crazy.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, it's a known fact that your government cares more about the corporations than they care about you, and that's just like
they're
obvious.
just like people.
They're just like persons.
Yeah.
Persons are not people.
I know, I'm making a joke.
So, yeah, he did drop some of the tariff, or he made exemptions in these tariffs for iPhone and other tech companies, I guess some specific companies. But it says that the total tariffs imposed on China in Trump's second term now add up to 145%. Well,
and you know what? I'd also think it'd be cool if all these big box stores like Walmart and Target and these garbage junk Chinese slave producing junk isn't there and available, because everything. I went to Walmart the other day, looked at fishing poles. I can buy a really nice fishing pole with a little thing of tackle for my kid for $9.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be made with slaves. I mean, it's just you know,
or subsidized in some way.
Whatever. It's just so chilly. Like fishing poles are cheaper now than they were 40 years ago.
They're also not as good, though.
Oh yeah, it's all garbage.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the reviews on them. I'm like, oh, this one's got 2 stars. This one's got 3 stars. And all the reviews are like, oh, poor quality, broke when I first time used it. And
I find that if you step up the quality of the item to make it comparable to what it was 20 years ago, you're paying like that number, multiplied by whatever the difference is in the price of money since then.
But the thing is, I would love to see that the flea markets make a huge resurgence. Like if we didn't have all this Chinese cheap garbage, people would be, I think it'd be really cool that, maybe these 145% tariffs on these Chinese brake rotors I can buy for the front of my truck for $18 on rockauto.com are now going to be way too much money to buy or even deal with. Not $18. They're like $36 for the cheap Chinese ones. And maybe people will start rebuilding their calipers. Maybe people will start rebuilding their wheel cylinders. Nothing really uses wheel cylinders
anymore. Don't you think that we got to a place where people are too destroyed? That I think that you're being optimistic, and I'm glad.
Yeah, so these weak, destroyed people that aren't going to be able to do any of this kind of stuff themselves are going to have to pay somebody else to do it, or they're just going to die.
I think they're not going to just die.
Survival of the fittest.
That's the thing.
They're going to start. They're going to start voting, and they're just going to reverse all this stuff.
I think they're going to kill us. I think they're going to be like, "Oh, I heard that
I definitely don't
Bitcoin
think
was going to take down the dollar. Then it happened, and I always heard that Ian Freeman, blah blah blah, sold Bitcoin, and then he's going to come to they're going to come to our house and kill us. They hear stuff on the news and come to my house and threaten me. It's happened before." So honestly, it's literally based in reality.
I think New Hampshire is the least likely place that could happen. This is way more likely if you live in Massachusetts or New York or Baltimore.
But I live in a city.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anybody can carry in any place in New Hampshire.
And my neighbors don't seem to care about me.
It's actually funny. I didn't realize that people do think about that. I was working down in Massachusetts, and I was telling a story to a guy who was down there, about how I saw somebody cut somebody off in traffic. And then I said, that's really silly. Like the guy cut the guy off just to pull into the very place that the other guy was pulling into.
So they're going to see each other.
So they're going to see each other. I said, like, that's really stupid. Like, why would you do that? You could get into a fight with the guy. Maybe you'd get shot. And then the guy said, oh yeah, that is up there in New Hampshire. Where like, so he was, so he's like,
my grandpa in Alabama was at a stoplight with somebody who started a fight with him, and they were like young, and he was like almost 80, and he got out of his car and knocked on their window, and they like rolled it down to start cussing at him, and he pepper sprayed them.
Yeah,
kind of fights he was
and armed society is polite, and you'd be less likely to cut off somebody and do a road rage incident in a place where pretty much everyone is carrying.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you're going to be a belligerent a-hole, you probably deserve to get shot.
I really think that we're going to be skipping a step. It's not that people are going to be poor and think, how do I get out of this myself? How do I fix this for myself and make my life a little better? They're going to just freak out, and if anybody around them seems to be doing okay still, they're going to try to steal from them.
So I think the people that are really going to freak out and have a problem are the childless cat ladies 30 years from now when they're all 60 and 70 years old and they can't take care of themselves.
Yeah, but if we get there.
Oh, sure, we're going to get there. It's going to happen. There's a whole bunch of childless cat ladies right now that are 40 years old, and I'm sure they're going to live to 70.
But what if they don't, because they lose their grocery stores and they don't know what to do?
Well, they're going to have to do something, right? I hope they've been really sweet to somebody. I hope they invested in someone younger than them. I hope somebody finds value in them, because, right now the way it is, you can just be a nasty old bee to everybody around you, and you're still going to get the welfare or the disability or the Social Security check. And the Social Security checks will probably never stop. They'll keep coming. They're just probably going to get to the point to where they if the price of
then
food,
you won't be able to buy anything.
right,
with
you
it,
won't be able to buy anything. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
quite
basically
likely what's going to happen. Or everything just goes bankrupt. All of these pensions become worth 30 to 50% of what they are now. There's got to be some kind of correction somewhere. But the thing is, you got all these childless women is going to be a major epidemic because there isn't the people paying into Social Security to take care of them. It's going to be kind of tough, and there are going to be straight up, huge commercial, residential, nursing home type things that are going to be pretty much exclusively for childless women, because there's going to be an epidemic of them that they're going to be beyond the age of working. They're not going to quite likely be able to afford the house in the homeowner association, with all the fees. And if things get really tight and the economy really contracts, and things have to be made by people that are actually going to have to earn a living wage here in America, then you're not going to have a whole bunch of this extra money floating around for everything. Like we've been living everybody in the studio has lived a life of absolute abundance their entire lives. We don't know what this is, really like. We can only just study cultures that have gone through these things. And I basically see the U.S. going down the same exact economic trail that Russia went through, when Russia collapsed, because it's all the same things.
But like that happened, that then led to an 80-year, socialist, communist, thing. And it's, like things get bad, they don't necessarily rebound and get better. They can stay bad for a very long time.
But I believe in the good things coming, for multiple reasons. So mostly because of this libertarian concentration here in New Hampshire. I wouldn't be so optimistic if I was basically anywhere else.
Yeah.
Maybe if I was hanging out with Jeff Berwick in Mexico, I might be this optimistic. But so we're well armed in New Hampshire. We have a libertarian movement where a bunch of libertarian families are all raising their children with an intent of their children being useful, valuable, and competent. We have a whole bunch of people that don't even identify as libertarian in New Hampshire that are just homeschoolers anyways. And in New Hampshire, most of your people who actually work hard for a living are very much by default against all the big government and taxation. Like I said, it's only like the parasite class that is really anti-free staters. Pretty much everyone else in New Hampshire is right on with the free staters.
Yeah, I met a local who said his family has been here for hundreds of years, and like the street he lives on is named after his family's old last name, and he's not a free stater at all, obviously, but he was like, I noticed the sign in your front yard, and I'm also of the take no crap type, and he just basically would get along with free staters. But
yep, that's another reason New Hampshire was picked. The culture of New Hampshire, of the native New Hampshireites, is hardworking people. I mean, it wasn't really until academia really created all of this parasite economy, essentially, that a lot of people now we have a bunch of soy boys in New Hampshire, but they're mostly like around the college towns and stuff, and the Democrat representatives. None of those guys. The only guy who's a Democrat that's got a firm handshake, it seems like, is that Jonah Wheeler dude. But I
really like
I like him too.
The way he talks and everything.
Yep.
I've talked to him in person, and he's respectful about things that we agree on and stuff. And
he's even respectful about things we disagree on. And so, but he doesn't have a testosterone issue. He's not a soy boy. He's a real man. Anyways,
I don't know about his testosterone.
You just look at him. He's
just sniff him.
Yeah,
you can
just
smell it.
Just shake his hand. You can feel it.
Yeah, so it's a kind of slippery. The testosterone as it oozes out.
Firm grip. So he's not limp wristed. So, but anyways, so when everybody 100 years ago, in the northern climates, especially rugged mountainy areas, or 200 years ago, even 100 years ago, 200 years ago, if the families didn't work hard all winter, I mean all summer, somebody wasn't making it through winter in the family, and these guys were all chopping firewood. They're pretty much every kid could operate an axe, or when chainsaws come out, they could operate chainsaws. Here in this neighborhood, and almost every old timer from around here milked a cow when they were a kid or worked on a farm. They did that stuff. So these guys are sort of fairly rugged, and it's a lot of the people our age I'm 45. You're what, 27?
28.
28. It's our generation has really gotten weak. And one of the things I believe in, the good things coming.
I'm so glad you said that, because I thought you were going to say that you guys are so much stronger than us. And I was just thinking at the grocery store the other day about the biggest pussies I ever interact with in public are like Gen X men who have like these big trucks. And I don't think that about you, obviously. I don't think about any of my friends, but the ones that are just out in public and they like, it's one thing if I see a testosterone driven 20-year-old with one of those trucks with the crazy lights that blind everybody. But when I see a Gen X man doing that, I'm just like, I hate them. I hate them so much.
Well,
do you know what I'm getting at, though? It's like,
right.
I feel like they're the worst.
There was this Facebook page, an ex-girlfriend of mine was really into this 15 years ago. And there was a Facebook page where you would like take a sticky note and you go to like somebody's truck that was, had a lift kit on it and looked like they were compensating. And she would write on a sticky note, Facebook, whatever, sorry you have a small penis. And take a picture of the truck and put it on the Facebook page. Oh, yeah, that was a thing. It probably still exists, but I don't look at Facebook. But yeah, there's a lot of compensating out there in the form of, things.
I just think it's rude. It's like you're going to drive behind people with these lights that are literally blinding them for no reason just because you want to not have to like actually look when you're driving. You want to be like, I want the whole entire street to be lit up like it's the mall.
Yeah, they might actually stop producing a lot of these lights, these white lights that are...
really?
Yeah, they were talking about there's science now that these lights are causing issues, the LED lights in the houses and a lot of these like HID
Oh, wait,
type,
in general or like specifically on vehicles?
on vehicles, HID.
Like a law?
I don't know about a law, but
I'll tell you,
heard that.
that's one law I'd actually support.
Banning these
Those
super bright lights.
They are horrible.
They're horrible.
They're horrible.
I've been brake checking people until they finally drive around me because they'll just stay behind you with their stupid brights on. It's like, if you have those crazy bright lights, why don't you want to be in the front,
So we could set up some reverse, 55-watt halogen reverse lights in the back of your car, and you could just flick a switch.
I've always thought about that would be fun, but I also don't want to get in a like physical fight with some crazy
I would just cover the
redneck.
back of the car in really reflective stuff, because then it's passive. You're not like flicking a switch on. It's just they get close, and it's like all they can see is that.
Like those semi-trailers with the stainless steel doors.
I was just about to mention those.
When you get behind them too close, it's too bright. It reflects off. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
On all my trucks, I've set up reverse lights where I could turn a switch on, so I could look at my trailer driving down the road at night, or just have reverse lights on for some reason when the truck's not running. And most of the times when people would be behind me with bright lights, I would just give it a little flick, and they would usually shut them. Two things happen. The lights shut. Three things happen. The lights go right to low beams, or they flash their high beams on because they have their low beams, or blue or red lights start flashing and I get pulled over by a cop.
Something I've started experiencing, people getting behind people and just flashing their lights until the person gets off the road.
That's a huge thing in like San Antonio with crazy racing
That's
people.
a lot. So
they're doing it all over Massachusetts.
Well,
they'll get behind you if you're in the left lane, which most of the people there are driving too slow in the left lane, but they'll just start flashing their lights. But they'll do it to me, and I'll be speeding. And so, and just the other day, it finally happened to me for the first time in New Hampshire, in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, "Are you serious, pal?"
That's never happened to me here.
So was it a foreigner?
I don't know, because it was midnight.
So we drove from Arizona to New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago. My family and I bought a minivan in Arizona, and I noticed that multiple times where we'd be going along in the left lane, and it'd be a car 100 foot in front of us. I like staying 200 to 300 foot off of cars because I just always pretend like I got a load of old horses in a trailer, and I don't rear end people. And anyways, I can't believe how many collisions I saw and broken down trucks driving cross country. It was insane. But so we were.
People are driving very, very recklessly these days.
All the people that were flashing the lights behind me as I'm doing, 82 miles an hour in Texas in the left lane, and the speed limit's 80, and the guy in front of me is doing 82 miles an hour.
Yeah,
it's
and like they're not going to get anywhere.
Right, and basically the people in the right lane are going like 81. And I'm not.
Well, the reason they do it is because it actually kind of works. People will get annoyed to get out of the way.
But it definitely seemed like some kind of like very dark foreigner that was in every single car because I started observing this, especially in Texas. I'm like, oh, it looks like some Mexican guy. And, as he's driving by me, I get in the right lane and he finally passes me. And he's just,
Well, I feel like
wants me to move. And it says on like a lot of cars on that, like to do your high beams, that's the pass signal. He's saying, I want to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you look at some cars, it won't say high beams. It'll actually say pass, like BMWs and Audis.
That.
Yep.
Oh,
and Volkswagens, I believe it says pass.
I don't know what that means, but I will say that the whole like being in a rush and wanting to get ahead and you're barely even getting ahead thing, it does seem to be a thing with people that are not from like the culture that I grew up around. And in the grocery store in Keene, there were all these people speaking another language. I don't even want to guess where they're from because it's probably going to sound racist because I don't know where they were from. Speaking another language, and
but you
they
do
were
have
doing this
some
thing.
Racist opinion about where they're from, right?
No, I don't. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry.
No, listen, I was just going to say that I was standing in line in the grocery store, like waiting to check out, and these people were behind me all talking to each other like they were doing like a spy movie. They were like, oh, no. I'm speaking English, but they weren't. They're like, oh, no. Now let's move to number 7. And then they'd be like there for a while, acting really like they'd be right behind me. They'd be acting really like just impatient. They couldn't believe that they had to wait in line behind like 2 people. And then one of their friends would call down to them and they'd run to another one. They were doing this back and forth thing, and they're actually definitely spending more time doing that crap than they would have if they'd gotten a line and stuck to it and just waited. It's insane. It's like this oh, I need to get ahead culture that doesn't exist here as badly, and it was just unintelligent, like not working.
There's definitely more hustle in these foreign people than there are in a lot of Americans. The Americans have definitely gotten fat and lazy and have sort of lost their drive. And I just want to see a lot of Americans have to do work like digging in the dirt. I do.
I just feel like that's really optimistic and that you think that they'll do it.
You know what, though? Yeah.
I think it's too bad. I think things have gotten too bad.
The other thing, though, what I see is I see a lot of those people, and they're not doing the hard work either. Nobody's really doing any hard work here. So if somebody comes here, they have this hustle. They're still not working hard.
If
they
that
came
was
here
hustle,
because it's easy.
It was dumb hustle. I've just got to say, if that was hustle, it was unintelligent hustle. It was like this thing. Like me and my friend used to talk on the phone all day, like from the time we woke up till the time we went to sleep. But we both did Uber Eats separately in San Antonio, so we're always talking about like driving. Like we would be talking to them and be like, "Oh my God, this guy in front of me," blah blah. And one thing we decided together was to never act like poor people when driving. And what they do, like you can tell by what they're driving. The poor people are just completely reckless and they don't care if they're could possibly hurt their car because they're in a crappy car. And they're always trying to get ahead. And the people in nice cars were always doing the more sensible medium thing, not driving super slow.
Defensive driving.
Exactly.
Conservative driving.
Driving faster, driving fast without trying to get around people and doing all these crazy things. And I've been in crazy fights with people on highways in San Antonio, and it's never somebody in a nice car who looks like they're going to a job.
We got caught in Austin traffic.
Poor activities.
We went and saw our friend at Greenbrier in Bastrop, Texas. Catherine Bonadin. She's a producer of Anarchapulco.com. Anyways, we went and stayed with her for a couple nights, but we got caught in Austin traffic, and literally every mile it seems like there was somebody rear-ended somebody.
Yeah.
And
there's no such thing as getting caught in Austin traffic because it's always traffic.
Okay, well, whatever.
It's so bad. In Austin, it's growing by leaps and bounds more than San Antonio is, and it has much smaller.
Well, yeah, because all the Californians.
Yeah, but Californians are moving to San Antonio too. San Antonio is growing like crazy, and Austin's growing faster with smaller space.
They're actually contracting a lot now. The housing market is dropping like hardcore around Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, a lot of Texas and Florida. The market's dropping out, which is good because this real estate market needs to fall apart so young people can buy houses.
I hadn't heard anything like that. The whole time I lived there was biggest booming area
this is recent.
Of the country.
Past couple of years, it's dropping hard.
When I moved away in January 2021 and visited in September 21, it was visibly more full of people. But that's because they were one of the first people to drop the masks. I think people were like, "Oh, it must be free there." No, you're literally extremely late. It's not free there at all. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up, and the Californians aren't helping make it more free either.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order
order and you're going to obey it.
Which one you can go this way?
You can do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa, hey.
Who do you think you are?
Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't gonna make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this?
Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone with the Week in Review. Over the last week, US President Donald Trump's raft of tariffs led to tumbles on global stock markets, with shockwaves sent around the world. Stocks recovered somewhat by the end of the week, particularly following moves to pause tariffs for 90 days to give room for negotiations. European leaders welcomed the move to put a temporary halt to the duties. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the pause an important step towards stabilising the global economy. Pablo Gutierrez reports from Brussels.
Ursula von der Leyen says Europe remains ready for talks, but only under fair and predictable conditions. The shift comes after the EU announced tariffs on $24 billion worth of U.S. goods. The White House says the extra import taxes for Europe are on hold as the EU's countermeasures have not come into effect yet. They are scheduled to be collected from April 15th. The EU will still be subject to the U.S. 10% base rate tariff that came into force on April 5th. Pablo Gutierrez, Brussels.
Well, China is the exception to the tariffs pause, now in line for tariffs up to 145%. The Chinese president has called on the European Union to join it in resisting coercion as US trade tensions grow. Xi Jinping spoke on Friday after China raised its own tariffs on US goods to 125%. Ross Cullen reports.
As China's trade war with the United States escalates, Beijing is hoping to work together with the European Union to counter Donald Trump's global tariffs. China and the EU have an uneasy relationship, with EU tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles already in place, plus Chinese taxes on exports of European brandy. But Xi Jinping has called on China and the EU to jointly, quote, oppose unilateral bullying practices. Ross Cullen, Paris.
Authorities in the Dominican Republic have called off the search for survivors following the roof collapse at a popular nightclub that killed more than 200 people. Ira Spitzer reports.
Breaking into tears at times, the head of the Dominican Republic's Emergency Operations Center said Thursday would be the last day of rescue and recovery efforts at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital, Santo Domingo. In the early hours of Tuesday morning, Jet Set's roof collapsed with hundreds inside. The death toll has now risen to at least 221 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, a local governor, and merengue artist Ruby Perez, who was performing at the time. 189 people were rescued from the club. The focus now shifts to mourning the dead and what will be a closely watched investigation into what caused the roof to collapse. Ira Spitzer.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. And 603-283-6160 is the phone number if you'd like to bring up whatever is on your mind. We already have someone on the line, but we have room for you too. 603-283-6160. And with you on Free Talk Live, you've got me, Bonnie.
Colin.
And Jay.
And we have Sarah on the line. So Sarah, in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, do you remember I talked about that dumb church that have the non-dairy creamer and the sugar?
I remember that. I remember that.
Well, they actually took over. There's a movie theater that was abandoned. I mean, it used to be, and then it was nightclub, and then the church bought it. And at first I thought they just bought renting or owned that part of it, and and the lady told me that they own like the whole shopping, like a whole strip mall, like 3 businesses down, and another 4 business, like a CC's Pizza Rental. And I was looking at her like, well, how was that possible? Well, and then she said the old beaten up church, the Maverick, the gas station, they bought them out. Loans enough money to buy like a whole strip with about 8 store spaces.
It's so with your. I almost said tax. What do they call it? It's with your.
It's a New Beginnings church, and the pastor
tithing.
Richard Mansfield.
Sorry, it's from the money that you guys give the church.
The tithes. Yeah.
Tithes.
Yeah.
Well, the tithing, but they get a tax exemption status. But I was looking at her like, how is this possible? That doesn't make much sense. And you know what? And she and me both agreed that as stupid as the congregation, no education, they were all in it, homeless. Half the congregation used to be homeless or drug or recovering, from drugs and alcohol. Come out of jail. They sponsor 9 women's home and then men's home. We're just like, well, it has to be God. And I'm like, well, it's because of God that blessed the church. And I'm like, oh yes, it has to be, because the congregation, they're stupid. I mean, like I was telling you, they don't have much money. All the people that go there are like broke, or they're staying at the men's program.
This is really telling me a lot about the way that she thinks money works. She literally thinks that these people have money because God just made it happen. And that's how she thinks about.
No, I thought she wasn't believing that.
No, she said she believes it. And she does believe that stuff, right, Sarah? You believe in prosperity gospel. You said that before.
Well, the people that go to the church, they're not rich.
So because they're not rich, you're saying it must be God is the reason that they were able to buy the strip mall?
But the thing is, the church is wealthy. You know what I mean? Because that whatever the money that they gave them, they got a strip mall. What that means is that don't they collect rent and they have to pay taxes on that? And
well, they don't have to pay taxes, actually, churches.
Wait, do they own it or are they just leasing it?
Well, either way, this is really telling because Sarah, she's on welfare.
So generally, here's what happens. A business owner, like a property management company, will lease out a large portion or a portion of their strip mall to a nonprofit and is a donation, so it's a write-off for them.
Mm-hmm.
So in Massachusetts,
hard.
Pyramid Properties, we did some snow plowing for them, and then one of their properties, they leased out a large space that was, I don't know, it was some department store that went out of business at Kmart or something, but essentially to a nonprofit organization that was, I don't know if it was religious or not, but that nonprofit organization qualified for property tax exemption. So what they did is they called.
So that transfers to the owner of the property that's renting it to them?
So what they were able to do is this like square footage they were renting it. They basically took the property tax on the property, figure out how much it was, and they went to the town and said, hey, we're exempt because this piece of thing is, this piece of is this whatever nonprofit that qualifies for a property tax exemption if that nonprofit owns or occupies the property. I also know another guy did this with his farm. He leased half of his farm to a horse rescue, an animal rescue. Actually, they did all kinds of animals, and he was able to basically get his whole farm off the tax rolls. And these people paid him a lease, and they paid him basically the lease was like half the value, and he had some other companies that basically donated the other, so it was like it was worth a huge write-off. So like you got a strip mall, and a lot of these like areas that would be a church would be worth like $5,000 a month, let's say. So the company has this piece of property they can't even rent out. Like they just can't rent it. And you're going to start seeing a lot more churches in these empty strip malls. So these
that's
companies
been happening
can
for a really long time.
Right.
Where I'm always like, oh,
No,
my friends'
this
churches are
answers
just
questions. I've been wondering about this because
in strip
I
malls.
see these like small churches.
In strip malls, yeah.
Well,
I've been to some.
all over like Massachusetts and stuff. Yeah.
So the property owner gets to write off the donation to the church. The thing's worth $5,000 a month. So now it's a tax deductible write off, which is better than just a straight up loss of $5,000 a month that they're not even getting. And they are able to. I don't know if this works in New Hampshire, but these guys did this in Massachusetts, and they have lawyers that just do this all the time and file this paperwork and get this stuff done. And they got friends and stuff, so they're able to get like a massive property tax reduction by having that church in there also. And of course, it's a church that's got a 501c3, and all hails government or Satan or whoever they worship, and we're going to do what what you tell us.
It just seems like all you have to do is create the nonprofit corporation. I mean, you don't even really need to.
I just think we're answering this question for Sarah when she doesn't even know how money works. But I really would like to talk to this caller since it's an unscreened caller. What's on your mind, unscreened caller?
I was just want to point something out here. The price of gold has soared against the U.S. dollar so much, and now the most accurate, the only figure I can come up with on the internet is 1 gram is how much a $100 bill weighs, or its mass. I suspect that 100 of them might be a little bit more or a little bit less than 100 grams, but I can't really find a more accurate figure. But just using that figure, okay, that means 31.1 of them would be a troy ounce.
That's right.
Which is $3,110 is a troy ounce of $100 bills. Well, a troy ounce of gold is now worth more than a troy ounce of $100 bills. $100 bills are no longer worth their weight in gold. And if you take this is a benchmark that we have reached at this point in the attack on the U.S. dollar. People were paid $20.
Well, it's more like the suicide of the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, people were paid $20.67 a troy ounce for their gold when they were forced to sell it to the government in 1933, and now it's over $3,000 an ounce, and so a troy ounce, which is 31.1 grams, and so also a troy ounce, 100 grams of gold, like a 100-gram bar of gold, occupies less volume than a stack of $100 bills, and so you have more value. And it also, dogs can't sniff gold like they can sniff $100 bills. And so I think it's just a matter of time before you're going to see various gold coins. When you go to a coin show and you're buying gold coins with cash, okay, you buy them with cash and you get your receipt and you stick the stuff in your pocket and you go, and you don't have to give your name or anything. But when you bring them in to sell them, they have these gadgets that are geek engineering electronic devices that you put the coin on there and you click what metal you want to test it for, and it'll tell you what the purity is of the coin. So
spectrometer, right?
So you do that, and
they're ultrasonic.
Yeah. So what you do, what I think you're going to see more people doing. Let's say they're in the business of selling corn. They'll just have a fixed rate of how many kilograms of corn for a gold coin, and it can be the Canadian maple leaf, or it could be the Australian kangaroo, or the Krugerrand,
or the goldback.
Yeah, we'll be trading goldbacks probably for corn. Actually, one thing I've been doing, talking about just weights and measures here, is I've been training my kids for a couple of years now to trade with people with goldbacks and the 1/10 ounce silver pieces I get. So we've been going to farmers markets, and I give my kids 1/10 ounce silver, and I tell them that they can get whatever they want except for candy with the 1/10 ounce silver. So they like to go find the guy who's vending ice cream. And we were in Arizona. We go to the farmers market, and my kids, my 3 and 5-year-old, did multiple transactions with the 1/10 ounce silver. And they only got rejected by one vendor because he was just some college kid who was like, "Oh, this is not my business." But there was a lady from Ukraine. There was these Vietnamese guys. there was some Mexican folks. They were like, "Oh, you got silver? Yeah, we'll trade with you, kid. Sure."
Nice.
And it worked out well.
For small purchases, yes, silver is better. But remember, if you don't have the 3,000 and something to buy a gold coin, that you buy the half ounces and the quarter ounces, you're paying a lot more per gram than you do when you're getting a full 1 ounce of gold. And you buy those, but silver, just remember that those are different prices, and they're going to fluctuate separately. So silver might go up 1 week against the dollar when gold might go down that week against the dollar, just for example. So, and nobody knows which way it's going to really go over the next few weeks.
I mean, that's more or less an artifact of the fact that people just don't really actually use them to transact in, so they're treating them more like they're, a commodity type, bulk item. But once people start transacting with it on the regular, they're going to treat a quarter and a half as a half and a quarter of a full ounce, like they used to.
Speaking of buying corn with gold, NH Pilled, which is a big New Hampshire Free Stater, somebody we know, but I don't know if I should out them, on Twitter, they posted that they went to a Himalayan market in Manchester and were able to buy things with gold back. So they showed that they bought, like, with one gold back a potato chip. I don't know if it was literally one gold back.
I found foreigners in the U.S. Accept gold backs far more readily because, a lot of...
And silver.
Yeah. They understand its value.
Yep.
And they've understood, a lot of foreigners, like the lady from Ukraine. I'm like, yeah, you know what happens when fiat dollar collapses. She goes, yep, I have lived through several local dollar or money collapses when I lived in Ukraine.
Wow. That's really scary stuff. Yeah, I don't want to live through that, but it seems like it's possible in my lifetime. Yeah, like the caller, I think it was Tom from New Hampshire. He seemed to think that somebody else was doing it to us because he said it was the assaults on the U.S. dollar, but I'm pretty sure this is just what was always going to happen. The suicide, like you said, Colin. So we have David in New Mexico on Free Talk Live. David, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Well, after listening to Turd, is stripper movies, of course.
That was a really boring call, so I really hope that's not actually what you want to talk about.
Well, you know me better than that by now, don't you? I kind of like make S up.
Well, this is a call-in talk show, so you have to talk about something more interesting to call in.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to talk about things that it's a call-in talk show.
That's right, it's the Colin talk show.
Yes.
So let's talk about Colin. What's up, Colin? How's it going, man?
Pretty good.
No, this isn't that kind of a show. It's a joke, but...
Oh, it's not the Colin talk show?
It's definitely not the Turd talk show. It's definitely not the stripper talk show.
Well, it's the Colin talk show, so we're letting Colin take the lead. What should we talk about, Colin, since it's your show?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever you want to. I'm lazy tonight.
We already talked about gold, which he was talking about today.
Yeah, actually, my mind is now just on gold since the previous guy brought it up.
Was there some kind of like when he was saying, "Oh, and this is actually $3,100 or whatever he was saying"? What was the significance of that?
What he was saying was that like
a bill weighs a gram. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he's saying.
Yeah, and so like the bill would say $100 on it or whatever, but that was worth more in weight than the gold. And he said, "Oh, gold has gotten so expensive in dollars that it's finally surpassed it to where the gold has more by weight." Yeah.
Wow, that is kind of interesting.
But then he said it had more by volume, and that's definitely not going to be true.
I don't know if that could be true because I heard this thing that gold. All the gold in the world could fit into 2 or something Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So it could probably be really small if it was melted down.
Well, it's not all
really
the gold
dense.
in the world. It's all the excavated gold, all the
mined gold.
That makes a lot more sense. Well, yeah, because how would we even know what else is under there unless... Well, still, that makes a lot more sense, but it still blows my mind because I just think of like all the gold jewelry I've seen. Like I've not like seen so much. Okay, yeah, that makes just
or it's 14 karat gold.
Like gold bags, gold. I just can't imagine it being all fitting into 2 swimming pools of the whole entire world. So if that's real,
have you seen an Olympic-sized swimming pool up close, Bonnie?
No. So I guess that does explain it.
I don't know either how many, like yards is that by yard, you know?
They're Olympic size. What is that? 50 meters long, and then the standard width is quite wide, and the standard depth would be it's probably 6 feet if it's for swimming only without a diving in. So do the math on that. Multiply 50 by well, you have to look up the width, but 50 meters long.
She's pulled up something that says 55 yards by 27 yards.
Okay, so really big. Honestly, the number of yards tells me even less than anything else.
So, well, 50. So that we're 50 meters long, 25.
Well, you don't know like how big a football field is?
I was about to say, people are always trying to explain to me things in terms of how big a football field is, and I've literally been to football fields, and I don't really. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean anything to me. Like,
okay, Bonnie.
I remember
think in terms of the size of shopping malls.
Stop. Anyways,
88,000 cubic feet is the capacity of.
She doesn't know what a cubic foot is.
Of an
She's
Olympic
a woman.
size
They don't measure things.
Swimming pool.
A cubic foot is a foot by a foot by a foot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I do know what that is. Well, we have another caller on the line, so I'm going to go to Dan O'Neill in New Jersey. You're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi, I want to talk about. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Jay.
Hey, man.
I want to talk about Social Security, Title IV defunding, and the fall of the American family in the United States. When I drive around some cities in New Jersey, I see that most of the boys are recruited into gangs. Most of the young girls are just waiting to get pregnant so they can get those Social Security checks. Fathers are usually in jail by the time they're 15 or 20. And this is the life of most of the city life. And why is this? I think Social Security is mostly to blame. Title IV defunding funds all this through the family court systems and other various things. And the one thing I'm wondering, and I'll stop talking after I say this, is supposedly Social Security is the third rail of politics. Nobody wants to get rid of it. Why is that? I think we should get rid of it today.
Here's why nobody in politics wants to get rid of it. So all of your politicians, nearly all of your politicians are lawyers. They are members of the Bar Association. So under Title IV D or E, I forget which one, there is an incentive fund where the judicial pension fund of each state gets 66% of the contributions that essentially family court creates via awarding child support. So anyone who pays child support, if you pay $1,000 a month in child support, the federal government gives your state $1,000 a month in in what they call a incentive contribution, and 66% of that $1,000 goes directly to the judicial pension fund. So anyone who is a former prosecutor who worked in a judiciary in any state, and almost all lawyers have some kind of work within a state department, a county department, that they have a judicial pension fund that they're a beneficiary of, and almost all these politicians are lawyers. Mm-hmm. So in New Hampshire here, I was at a New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which is a really great organization. I go to at least one of their things a year, and they were talking about how New Hampshire doesn't have 50-50 custody of children, and they can't understand why there's always a couple of handful of lawyers that just basically beat the crap out of any bill that anybody puts in front to make it so it's available for people who get divorced to have 50-50 custody, and there's no need for the courts involved at all. Well, in New Hampshire, from what I understand, that's not it. The state has to award custody to somebody. Well, that's because when the state awards custody in a divorce case, they are one party is now paying child support, and the state is going to get that in a reimbursement. There's this guy Jeff Younger. If you YouTube search Jeff Younger Timcast, you're going to find a Timcast episode where Jeff Younger was on Timcast IRL, and he was also on Tim Pool's Culture War, and they cover a lot of similar things in both of those shows, but they're both really good to listen to. Jeff Younger talks about how when the family court awards custody to a parent, they are to award custody based on whatever metrics is going to give the state the most incentive funds from the federal government. So this is why they always want to award custody to the parent that can't pay the child support, so that the breadwinner, whoever that is, and sometimes it's the mom. I actually met 3 moms in the past 2 months who are paying child support to basically lose their deadbeat dads, and they can't understand why. And I'm like, this is exactly why. Because you have this high-powered corporate job, you make all this money, that you're the one, like one woman in Texas was telling me that she is paying something like $780 a week child support to her, you
just incentivized me to go have a kid and get a divorce.
You finally
Yeah, I mean, I'll get the money.
Right, and at the rate you're going, waiting as long as you are, basically that's what you're going to find is some corporate exec woman in her 40s is pretty good looking.
I know how to get them. I know what they want.
Right. So you guys can do the IVF. And you can be the daddy, and then you can divorce her, and you can just raise the kids and get paid.
Nice.
So it can work for guys too if you're really slick. I guess you can abuse this system also. But so this is why nobody wants to address this, because it is a gravy train for the politicians, and it is not talked about. It is very well hidden. But Jeff Younger on Timcast gets into the code and everything in the state of Texas, where it says that the judges at family court are instructed to award child support for whatever benefits the incentive money from Social Security or from Title IV, D or E or whatever it is, to the court or to the state, because most of that money goes to the pension fund. Now, Mike Gill,
is that every state? Sorry,
it's available in every state, but this is just what he said specifically for Texas, because this Jeff Younger guy is the one who his retarded ex-wife, who is is basically transitioning their son into a girl, chemically castrating a 10-year-old boy.
Didn't they take him to Colorado?
They took him to Texas. I mean, they took him to California.
Oh. Yeah,
and
I've heard about this.
I really think the Texas Rangers should mount up, ride to California, full tactical, ready to go to war with the California, whoever's going to defend that this kid getting castrated. Chemically castrated, they should go seize that kid. But the judges in Texas are all complicit. They're most of these guys are the judiciary has been infiltrated by a whole bunch of basically educated liberals, overeducated liberals, and they're all on the gravy train, and that's what it is. It's the incentive money, and pretty much every lawyer is part of the judicial pension fund, because they all go work for a couple of years as a public defender or a prosecutor or whatever, or even if they just get like a paper pushing job in a prosecutor's office, or they're an assistant prosecutor or whatever.
They're all parasites, even if they're technically on the private side. I guess some of them can be private lead lawyers, but I feel like they're all parasites, like you said. And this has been Free Talk Live. Check out jnoon.com for more JNoon, the Anarchapulco videos he was telling us about. Thanks for listening. freetalklive.com for more, and we'll be live again tomorrow, same time. Peace.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies,